Call to order Hastings on Hudson Board of Ed meeting September 9, 2019. Welcome. Okay, so we've got quite a few presentations today, so we'll try to move quickly. Announcements. I'm going to pass the meeting over to Dr. Henning Piedma for some announcements for the upcoming weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Oops. Mr. Sunheim. There we go. And board trustees, good evening. We have a few exciting things going on, but first and foremost, I wanted to actually start with a little, well, I'll get to that later. We have an opening slideshow that we'll look at shortly, but it really is a way in which we celebrated the opening of the school year, as evidenced by the students who are part of a collection of, thanks to Janine, a story of our district and a story of the, is told through their beautiful faces and the smiles at each of the schools, and obviously Melissa, Maureen, and I were there at Hillside as well as visited a number of forums, but that will come up later, but you have it in board docs. And it's really just an awesome, a collection of various people ranging from our superintendent's conference day to our, I guess I'm not hooked up to this one, Patrick, but that's okay. It's a wonderful celebration that started with our superintendent's conference day, where all of our staff came back and we met together in the auditorium. So all the smiling faces that Janine captured during a lot of the visits, our breakfast out in the just across from the office, just before the auditorium, was another great sort of sign of everyone being back together and being very hopeful and upbeat. So there's a lot of positive energy that came out of just that day. Ms. Szymanski was involved with the new educator orientation, so you have lots of photos that, again, Janine took that celebrate that experience. We were so excited to have our music educators perform a favorite Fleetwood Mac song, Don't Stop. It was certainly apropos, thinking about tomorrow, so they were really superb. And it was a wonderful kickoff for that, that morning. And Janine, thank you again for taking lots of photos of our children coming in. Our seniors, obviously, we're sort of gearing up to be in their sort of official role as the head of our student body at the high school. We had assemblies that Ms. Szymanski and I attended, 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade assemblies, where the leadership team at the middle school talked to students about, just their expectations for them during the course of the school year. And again, a lot of very positive energy, a lot of very, very polite students across all 4 grades. So it was really wonderful to be with them and to see them. And obviously, the cherry on top of the sundae was our visit to Hillside, to see all the young children getting off of the bus or being dropped off, again, with all of their materials, mostly tissues. That as a little person, you need a lot of tissues and paper towels, so they certainly had plenty of those things. But most importantly, there was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, about being, a new student coming into the new school year. So we were just overjoyed by being able to be there and have that energy. Our PTSA and Sept leadership had a very wonderful meet and greet session, lots of parents signing up, and a lot of positive energy there as well. So we are off to a great school year, as evidenced by just those photos and the ones, as I said, you've seen, and a number of media spots, and we appreciate our enterprise team. Tim came to, not this Tim, but Tim the reporter, spent a little bit of time in front of Hillside taking lots of photos, and it was just an appropriate celebration for the beginning of the school year. In terms of other events that are on the horizon, we have a number of really exciting opportunities for our parents to participate in open school night, back to school, not back to school, open school events that are really great opportunities to learn about what's happening in each of the buildings, certainly at both Farragut and the high school. So we hope that all of our parents are able to come out for that session and those sessions and meet their teachers if they don't know them, but certainly to get a sense of what's going on and what to expect during the course of the school year. So I think that's about it in terms of really kind of highlighting a lot of the really awesome things that are happening and are taking place for the coming school year and for the coming week.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
They were nice pictures. I'm sorry we couldn't.
We're just going to check on.
Yeah, that's okay.
And that's just because my son was front and center. Which I
Was he?
did.
Lots of opportunities.
And so there is a picnic. There's a back-to-school picnic 5:30 on Friday for Hillside, back-to-school night for the middle schools this Thursday, and the high schools next Thursday. So great opportunities to come out. Obviously, most parents will be there for those. Okay, so now passing it over to the rest of the administrative team. I'll pass it over to Ms. Szymanski first for some update.
Sure. It was a very joyful and happy first week, as Dr. Henning Piedmont shared. I won't be redundant, but it was really wonderful to visit classrooms and lots of opportunities to participate already in learning activities as we move between the rooms, see students in action. I did ask one of the kindergarten classes if they brought their most important supply, which was their smile, and I did get one laugh from that, so that was good. It kind of disrupted the deer in headlights from the beginning. Really good, smooth transition for all in the system. I have been meeting with the assistant principals, and together we designed a Dignity for All Students Act roadshow for each of the 3 buildings. These presentations took place at the faculty meetings, and the DASA requirements were reviewed, and we also created a reporting form, and that's on the quick links tab of each web page. And in preparation for our migration, I've been working with Lyric to coordinate Google professional learning trainings for each of the stakeholder groups. So we've focused on Drive, Google Docs, Gmail contacts, and Google Calendar. I'll be sending out a survey so that we can differentiate the training sessions. So the office staff has been trained. Teachers will be next, and then we'll have a TA and aide training along with custodians as well. So we're really looking to be responsive to where people are and to really support them in that transition along the way. And lots of preliminary discussions about curriculum and instruction happening, and busy, happy, and all great things for a smooth start.
Okay, just going to give you an update. I think last week I reported out about the upcoming safety plan hearing, which we're required to have every year. And as part of that particular update of the safety plan this year, it's also going to be including a memorandum of understanding, which is a new requirement from the state, and basically it outlines what the role of the security officers are in the school buildings, and just so it's very clearly articulated so people understand what their role in the building is and what it isn't. And we will be working to solicit some feedback prior to the adoption of that, which will be incorporated into our safety plan. So you'll be seeing that up online as well, and that's a new kind of piece. It's fairly straightforward, and our attorneys have already vetted the agreement that we'll be entering into. Tonight we have our architects, both groups today, to share some updates on the bond work. It's very exciting, and you'll see that in some of our smaller projects that are under different packages. We'll be looking to submit those in the upcoming months. So as part of that work moving forward, I'll be working with our financial advisors and our bond counsel, because we will be in need of some funds shortly. But it'll be we will be issuing a band first, not an actual bond, just to kind of be able to cover some of the costs associated with some of the things that both the professional services fees as well as some work that may be taking place starting in like the spring or the coming summer. And then, okay, so then also, I think on one of our board updates, I had spoken to you about that I've been meeting for the last few years with the Safety Council, Safety Group, and we have another meeting coming, I believe, either next week or the week after with the Traffic Committee. And this work, although we've been at it for a couple of years, and we even worked with the PTSA to secure a grant to do an evaluation with engineers around the building, we're planning to come earlier in the school year with a couple recommendations. We had looked at different drop-off zones and additional crossing guards and different things over the course of the few years, but working with the village representation, we will be in the hopes of kind of showing what we think could potentially help alleviate some of the issues around the school and create some more safe drop-off zones with the help of our village. So that I'll be meeting with them in the hopes that we'll kind of give you some idea of what some of those ideas might be in October. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to open it up for public comment. Oh, student report, yeah, sorry. We do have our new student rep here, so I apologize, Sophia, right?
Yes, Sophia.
Sophia, for skipping over you. And you, along with Clay Haddock, you'll be here all year, is that okay?
And next year.
And next year, right. So with that, I'll pass it over to you to provide a report from the student body.
All right, well, the first week of school has been really great. Most sports teams have had their first games, and pretty much every club has met at least once. Tomorrow, the student union is meeting for the first time, where we'll discuss goals for the year and hopefully keep this high energy up.
And can you tell us a little bit about you, what you're
Me?
in
Okay.
11th grade?
My name is Sophia Monero. I'm in 11th grade. I am also the junior class president, and I'm on the swim team.
It's great. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
We look forward to getting to know more about you and hearing more of your reports, so thank you. With that, I'll open it up for public comment. And what we ask is that you keep it to 3 minutes per comment. Public here, I don't think, but keep it to 3 minutes per comment. I won't go through the entire preamble that I did last time, but it's in board docs. Please keep comments not to anything personal, and we as a board will not be able to respond now, but we may respond in the future, or a member of the district administration may, given what their concerns are. So with that, I'll open it up for public comment. Please share your name and if you're a resident of Hastings. No takers, okay. Great, so we've got with us tonight 2 sets of architects that are working on our bond work. I'm not sure who's going first.
I think it's PBD.
Okay.
Yeah.
PBDW. And so with that, I'll pass it over to you. I don't know if you want to set anything up, Maureen, or...
Okay. Yeah, so we have 2 groups of architects tonight. We have PBDW, who is the design architect, and will be presenting for us tonight the proposed design for Hillside School, as well as just giving you a taste of what potentially some ideas are for the middle school auditorium at the very end of the presentation. So Ray and Raina have been working with the district. They went through a full programming phase over the course. They've been hard at work over the summer, re-meeting with all the different groups that would be using the space. And what you will see tonight is taking all that information and synthesizing into what you see in front of you tonight. So Ray and Raina, please. Thank you.
Is it possible to dim the lights just a
Sure.
little bit?
Yep.
Is that too dark? It's okay?
Okay.
Again, my name is Ray Goodell. I'm a principal Flatfire Goodell White architect. I'm also a 20-year resident of Hastings on Hudson. Both my daughters were K through 12 and now are off to college and graduate school. And this was the Hillside Elementary School is a wonderful place for them. And it's just an amazing opportunity to think about this school again and hopefully come up with something that is inspiring and uplifting for the kids. So, what's wonderful about Hillside is its setting, and this to me has always been special. It's this wonderful wooded, very protected atmosphere, separated from cars generally, and with wonderful ball fields, but basically with views out to the woods. And it's just a lovely place for the kids to learn, for their first experience at school. This is an aerial view of the campus. You see the tennis courts down to the lower left, and the ball field, and then the school itself. And what is really wonderful, having walked through, I walked my kids up the path by Chemka and then up the back path to school. Some other parents come through the woods, and some come around through the drive. So these are the pathways into the school, which are really reinforce informality and kind of lovely atmosphere. Into that, there are levels of activity, which represent the red dots there in the middle, red circles, where there are intense areas of activity along with the ball fields and how they relate to paths of entry. And then this yellow zone in the middle being kind of the highest concentration of energy, of people, of traffic, of students. And so this is kind of what we're attempting to resolve, with the pathways, the orientation, and how to create space out of these buildings, which helps reinforce this whole atmosphere of campus, this wonderful little campus. So these are the pathways and how they resolve right now. They don't resolve very well. Some of them do. Coming around the front circle into the building is pretty well established. The pathways up from the pool, the nice walk through the woods, are not really resolved. You end up in different locations and leave you a little bit wondering where you're going to go. So what we felt was the opportunity here was trying to make some interconnectivities with these pathways, to acknowledge the higher levels of activity, the playground, especially as it relates to the cafeteria wanting to front out onto the playground, which we understand from our programming meetings. There's a nice way to go to have lunch, to come in from the school to have lunch, and then to go out to the playgrounds directly. So we felt this represented the opportunity for us, and how to create something out of this, capturing of these pathways and areas of activity. So here's the existing building. This is it as it exists right now. It dead ends out onto the ball fields with kind of a blank wall, and the playgrounds are there towards the left, but it doesn't capture them in a nice way. So we thought of this building as a way to begin to do that. So we thought what would really be interesting is to create a building that helped capture that space and reconcile pathways, and to front it on to the playground, to front the building onto the playground. So we came to this solution, which is to put the stage back into the building where it connects to the building, to create a glass, let's call it a bay window that overlooks the playground with a pergola or front porch connecting it, to put the food service all the way in the back. And then what we have, this is a cafeteria and auditorium, which is going to require lots of shifting the furniture. So what we've been researching and we've come up with and used in other projects is an automated seating system, which is nested on the south side, facing the basketball court, so to speak. So the only opportunity for real glazing, because of these other requirements, is out towards the playground, and we felt that was the right response. And this is the lower level. Because of the change of grade, we're getting additional, actually go back one slide. We're also, in addition to the stage, the food service, the cafeteria itself, we're also picking up 2 classrooms at this level, which are backed onto the row of them facing the woods. So we're picking up 2 classrooms there, and below we're picking up 2 classrooms in addition to a large storage area, which is also connected by elevators. So the elevator is going to serve those 2 floors. And by the change in grade, this storage space is kind of you never want to use the word free space, but because of the change of grade, we don't have to excavate too much to create this space. So, and it's desirable space. So, again, the program that you're looking to back up on is based on the work that H2M did in connection with the bond, and then subsequent meetings that we had with staff and administration. And Rita will now take you through specifically how these spaces are going to work.
So zooming in onto the addition, you'll see the pathway coming from the existing school and from the existing drop-off area, and a new glazed entryway, which during the school day is mostly an exit path for the cafetorium, and in weather that where students can exit through there out onto the playground area or back to the upper school for the upper school kids to try and alleviate some of the congestion in the existing corridors in that wing. So coming into the glazed entry, and then this is the plan of the cafetorium set up as an auditorium space. So these are telescopic seats, so automated seats that retract back into the bay to the south, and then retract it, and then are automated out and accommodate about 550 kids. We're looking at benches instead of individual seats. So even though the seat count is calculated for an adult, it's likely to be able to fit a few more kids as well, which I know is desirable by the administration. And we are looking at a flat stage area. So the seats tier down, and the stage area is a flexible space that, while it's set up for a cafeteria, you can use as additional space for the cafeteria, and while it's set up as an auditorium, you can use as a larger stage space that is still framed by a proscenium, and a large backstage area that backs up onto what is now an existing classroom, which we have divided into 2 rooms, a resource room and either green room or music lessons room. So music lessons, there are a few, the backstage area and the resource and green room areas can be used for early morning music lessons, which I understand are about 5 to 10 kids in the morning before school. And there are bathrooms to accommodate the new cafetorium space. As Ray went through, the kitchen is backed up onto the west side of the building, and the 2 classrooms, the kindergarten-sized classrooms, on the west as well. So then, for a cafeteria use, the tables that were stored in the storage room right next to the kitchen would roll out. So that storage room has been sized to fit all the necessary tables, and they fold up. And so those are wheeled out. The retractable seating wheels back into the bay, and you can see the empty space for the stage can be used for additional space for further tables if needed. So this seats 280 kids, which is more than 2 grade levels, which was a requirement to reduce the amount of lunchtime, which is spread out quite a bit right now in the existing cafeteria.
And then this is what a frontal view would look like into that court area. What we were attempting to do was to mediate the scales. Right now the hillside buildings are very low, with the exception of the gymnasium space, and we wanted to respect that. So we again, a reason to locate the stage towards that, and then to bring up the higher portion of the building as required by the auditorium towards the south. And then you can see the glazing, this bay window that we're talking about, looking out into the play area. Here's another view. The cladding that we're looking at are large-scale brick-colored panels, composite panels that will riff off the kind of homogeneous brick that the hillside now has, and hopefully to enliven it. The brick there is kind of a brownish a brownish red, and we thought it would be a nice way to give a little sparkle to the end of the composition, which will be a very prominent corner as you come in, and you see the front porch pergola area there, which will mediate the sun coming in from the east, and would possibly could be used to grow things on as a pergola. So we're very excited by that. And then this is the corner shot showing the south and the east elevations. On the south side, where the auditorium seatings nest, which is basically a blank wall, it gets terrific light. So what we were looking at is the possibility of creating a green wall at that area. The upper panels that you see there, that are the whitish panels, there are composite panels that transmit light. You don't look through them, but they transmit light. So you get a tremendous amount of light internally to this that's not vision panels per se. And it transmits that light in. It's full spectrum light, which is really desirable for kids. That combined with the front, this will be a really wonderfully lit addition. These are straight on elevations showing just how those panels work with the expansive glass and the pergola across the front pergola, or front porch, as you will, which could be used right after lunch. Kids could sit out there for lunch. Informal teaching could happen here. We think it's a really nice and welcoming gesture to the school. And then the south elevation, an idea of putting an armature against the panels for these growing up. And this could be really exciting thing for kids and for teaching as well. And these are some interior vignettes showing you how this is all going to work. You can see the reason for wanting to bring down the stage. It's a very high stage. It's a 12-foot high proscenium, 12.5 feet. Still nice proscenium, but at the same level of the cafeteria. Then you can see the glass looking out through the pergola. And if you look to the right, you can see the chairs stacked, and this is their stacked position. The lighting will be indirect direct pendant lighting, which will be diffuse light. It won't be glaring. The ceiling will glow, and it'll provide a really nice kind of a uniform lighting within the space. The shape of these panels at the ceiling are designed to do two things. One is to help transmit sound from the stage through angled reverberation, and the other is to prevent it from getting too noisy. They will be slight absorptive panels, so you don't have the craziness of too much noise, which will always happen. Looking down from the seating then retracts. And now you're looking up at the top of the bank of stairs, seats. You're looking through that composite panel, which will bring light in, which could be darkened through curtains for at the time of a performance or something, if something was happening during the day. These are some just the kind of inspirational shots to talk about materials that we're thinking about, which we think are just the right thing for Hillside. It's colorful, it's light, it's got vegetation, it's got comfortable outdoor spaces, and just thinking about how kids are out there, how energetic they are, we just think this would be a really nice way to contribute to that, to all that great energy. Now, we talked briefly about a raised stage, and this is an example of a project we did in New York just recently, the St. David's School, where the desire was for no stage, and it works beautifully. There's the sight lines are really good. You don't lose space due to stairs and worrying about stage. You're able to double purpose the stage space for additional seating for an event or additional tables for the cafe, and it works just fine. We've done this in a couple of installations in the city, and it's been desirable for its flexibility. These are images of retractable seating and how it works. But I think in early discussions, it was decided that a bench-type seating would be a more appropriate seating for the kids. And then on the upper left, you see acoustic panels, which are actually from St. David's, that worked out extremely well for controlling and modulating sound. And then finally, a rendering of what it could look like, which we think is we're just really happy to try to create something that's full of energy. These kids are full of energy. You go up there and it's just wonderful how these spaces work. And what we really want to do is, contribute to that, keeping that energy and focusing it, and making this building a welcoming presence rather than rather than something that's closed. So that is pretty much the presentation of this. There are questions or
Does it make sense to talk about, is this the?
Yeah, I mean,
just this part?
if you want to just
Okay,
focus
yeah.
on Hillside.
Yeah.
because, that's-
Do you want to turn the lights on?
I just want to say that our student rep, Sophia, went from school to a meet to here, so I don't know at what point, if you feel comfortable, you can leave whenever you feel you need to go home and do homework and everything.
Yeah, please feel free.
I think, yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, so when you feel so moved, you can feel free to leave.
I have a couple of questions. Are you going to say?
Yeah, no, go ahead, please.
The seats and when it comes out for the auditorium, is that like in a gym? Are those like plastic seats that kind of come down?
So these are all examples of the seats. So it's made more for black box theater. So it's a similar kind of idea as bleacher seats, but they're made to accommodate a much more comfortable seat. They're padded benches, and they're made for black box theaters, so they're not loud and clanky, and so it's a similar kind of telescopic system that you would see in a gym. It's just accommodated for an auditorium space or.
But it's more of a bench, right? It's not like the red seats.
We could divide that either.
No, the red seats we at one point were looking at individual seats, but we had decided in earlier meetings that benches would be preferable. So it's more like the top image or the image on the bottom right.
God.
So they're padded benches, and they look really nice. They're not kind of the wooden benches that you would see in a gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we've used these in 2 other installations and they work quite well.
Yeah. And then what happens, I know you mentioned if it's sunny, is there shading, or is it just that the material or the pergola would block some of the sun? Or
Pergola, from the angles that we've calculated, the pergola will depending on how dense we make the slats over it, it'll mediate the sun going in. So it'll provide some shading, and we'll further study this to make sure that it performs as we intend.
And then, how many classrooms did you say that we're building? 4 classrooms that we're adding?
Correct.
Great. Just wanted to confirm.
I have a couple other questions. Is there air conditioning in the?
Yes, there will be air conditioning in the new classrooms as well as in
The whole edition.
And then I'm assuming that it's handicap accessible with ramps and.
we have a new elevator which is serving the 2 floors.
Okay. And then just going back to the classrooms, I just remember that was a big point of discussion last year, the number of classrooms. Is that creating 4 additional?
Yes, 4 new classrooms.
Okay. All right.
That's always
And are any of the other spaces that you mentioned possibly convertible to classrooms, should that need eventually arise?
Backing up to the stage that are, so they're not classroom space, but that are resource room space, so they're sized for SUD resource room space and music lessons and more temporary class space. So for a limited time use class space is the better way to say it. So, but the main classrooms are along the west end, to extend the existing line of classrooms. So there are 2 on this first floor and 2 on the floor below.
And that storage area, it would have to stay a storage area because the benches have to go, the tables would have to go in there if you don't want
No.
them.
No, that's the 178.
Storage area over here. There's an additional storage area on the basement level.
And the building, the way it's designed, will have the ability, if in the future, like another bond or through capital reserve, the way the building's being designed, there is an ability to add additional classrooms. I mean, not with this particular project, but it's being designed so that if we did need to add, like 2 additional classrooms down the road, that the space is there for that. I mean, was that your question? Kind of like?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it allows for expansion.
is that the case? Because with the diagonal, can you still add those? I know we had talked about adding two more.
A couple of options for that, yes, if it works.
Going back to the resource room. Oh, is that the? If
The
you had to do- if
possibility
you had to
for
do it
4
build out.
classrooms there?
Two top rooftops.
There is a possibility of two tops of that. So this is two at the top here,
Yeah.
and then two at the bottom, and potentially even accommodating the existing storage space into another classroom.
That's-
So it's a potential eventually 4 or 5.
I was gonna,
The change in grade works very well in this situation.
Yeah.
Because you're dropping off.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, so I'll just go with my second question first, because we're on the topic. With the excavation that enables that storage on the ground level, did you think at all about increasing the depth of that excavation? Because to enable a classroom down there?
We've talked about that, and we would like to do that. And what will happen is this will be a result of test borings where H2M is organizing for test borings. Where the rock is, there's a lot of rock there.
Yep.
And rock chopping gets to be quite expensive.
Sure.
So we will, if we can do it, and if it can all fall into the correct budgeting, I think the idea is to do it.
To preserve, yeah. So what is it right now in terms of, well, and this is now just out of curiosity, the storage space as it's currently envisioned is what floor to ceiling height?
That storage space as it's envisioned is the same level as the existing basement. So that is the full floor height. So the basement level is the classroom level right now.
Yeah, okay. So it really is classroom.
That's right.
It is of
That's
classroom
our intent,
size.
unless there's something in the
These will be
boring
configured
that-
exactly like the other classrooms, the
Yeah.
same ceiling height,
Yeah,
the same.
yeah. It becomes ultimately a district choice as to how to use
And
that
it's served
storage
by the
space.
elevator as well. as
Interesting.
the stair.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I think,
So that-
okay, I won't overstress this one. And then the other question I had, do you want to stay on that point or go to the next question?
Next question.
Okay, so the next question is around the resource room and green room. Can you just, right there, what was in that space? I guess one of those rooms looks like it sort of borders the old footprint and into the new footprint. What was in that
So
before?
that room, where you see the green room, the resource room, and the bathroom,
Yes.
currently is one kindergarten class.
Okay,
That's where
all
we
right.
talked about putting the kitchen at one
kitchen
point.
was
Previously,
Oh,
there
okay.
was a kitchen there.
All right.
And
We
we
just
did
need to
the bond.
remember that. Okay,
But actually, this works better because it kind of gives us those other spaces we need as well, which were part of our work, were to find other, the music spaces.
Backing up the stage on the existing classroom space kind of gives you the opportunity to use that whole area as a flexible time use space.
In that gray spot in the middle, that's the existing small gym, is that what that is?
Yes. This over here is the
Yeah.
existing small gym, the existing cafeteria is back here. People go back to the basement, right? This is the existing cafeteria, this is the existing small gym, the extension is along this side.
We're still thinking about the library.
Yeah, we are. That's not part of this presentation. We were just talking about the commons. I said that's still in the plan to convert it once we have the new space.
Yeah. Just remind the board and everyone, when, as we move along with this, do you think we'd actually be able to use this? Is it end of the 2020, 2021 school year, beginning of 21, 2022?
I think H2M in their presentation will give some
Okay,
updates on the
talk about that a little
timeline,
bit.
so I
Okay,
think we can
great.
get into that in terms of their submission and when the space would come online for us.
I think the design looks, and I hadn't seen this picture before. Maybe this was the new.
This is new, I haven't had this. It's
Um,
beautiful.
It was finished about 3 hours ago.
We didn't see this.
The only issue with that is
It's
there's no
beautiful.
way
It's amazing.
Joe would let the grass
I
look
know,
like that. There's
exactly.
zero chance. I just saw that and I thought, there's no way that would
It
happen.
looks very meadow. It does.
After the kids leave, it looks like this.
Yeah.
'cause
Fair
I
enough.
walk through it every day. This
Fair
is
enough,
just-
fair enough, fair
Little
enough.
house on the pool.
Well, I think, I think is really, interesting about, I think it's what inspired your design, why I really appreciate it. But it really comes to life in this picture is, I think we end up in a lot of these facilities meetings. We talked about this, board meetings, facilities meetings. I mean, we do the bond because we need space for things. But I think anyone who knows anything about design and architecture realizes that space in and of itself is square foot, but it also has to do something to inspire. And when it inspires, it has all sorts of psychological positive impacts for a variety of things, including creativity and learning. And this space, to me, it really carries a level of inspiration, which I think is going to really rub off on the school community, be it parents, faculty, and most importantly, the kids. So, I really appreciate that you've taken the time to think through it from that perspective. Obviously, that's what you do for a living, but it really works well, I think. So I think this picture, this shot really brings that out.
Thank you. We're extremely happy with how it came together and how it means that it's not just an accumulation of parts, that you're able to get something greater than just the sum of the parts and the composition and the way you position glass, that you get outdoor spaces that are confined, and so we're really pleased with the overall outcome.
And I didn't really know that when I came up from the pool, I was confused where to go until I saw that. And I was, maybe I have been confused where to go.
I get confused every day.
So as far as next steps go, what do we,
Well, I mean, I think,
from a design perspective?
well, I would say that tonight was the opportunity for the entire board to see it, and I think if we would give the blessing to what we're seeing, then that they would be able then, H2M then kind of moves forward with doing some of their work, is that correct? And then, because the submittal process and the materials happens much later, right? In terms of, with the cost estimating and all
We
that.
are closing the schematic design phase on this.
Right.
And we hope to turn something over to the
them.
construction manager
Okay.
shortly so that we can get the pricing exercise
Right.
done as quickly as possible, so that if we have to begin to look at modifications, we do it now rather than later.
All right, so the construction manager who's here this evening will be providing different cost estimates based upon, now that the schematic design is done, they present one number there, because I think there are times, as beautiful it is, we may have to scale back some things depending upon what the price estimating is. Like
So it
all that
seems-
rock,
so it seems
all
to
the
me
rock
we're
taken
at
out.
We're at a place where the board just has to kind of say, we directionally.
Yeah, I mean, unless
There's
to-
obviously
right.
materials issues and things of that, which,
Yeah.
some design issues which will continue to.
Correct.
But I
Fill
can,
them out.
I can kick off by saying I directionally feel comfortable with this. And I appreciate the, the time and the energy from everyone involved in putting this together, especially you, Maureen, and who's been toiling in the background for quite a while, so thank you.
No, it's exciting. That's how, I mean, I knew the board would be thrilled when they saw the final results of the work is really amazing. It really is.
Does everyone else feel comfortable giving the blessing to move forward with these designs?
I just wanted to add that you said that part of the inspiration was for it to be an uplifting design, and I definitely, in addition to the inspirational feeling, I think it definitely is uplifting, and I love that it both complements the natural environment and also frames the play environment for the kids. I think those two pieces for an elementary school are key, and I want to thank you for being mindful of that.
Okay, great.
We have a little more to show you.
Oh, good. That's what I was wondering, do we have the stuff in the middle?
Yeah, they're just going to give us a little taste tonight of some ideas they're thinking about for the middle school auditorium renovation.
This is some preliminary work regarding the auditorium, and this, I would say that when we began the programming exercise for the auditorium, we were getting some different ideas about how the space would want to be used. One is just a straight auditorium, a straight renovation of the auditorium, keeping the raked floor, but it didn't seem, and this is the current configuration of it, it's a very traditional auditorium with a proscenium, seating an aisle through the middle. Sight lines are not that great in this theater as they are. but it didn't seem to address the concerns that we heard through it. The concerns that we heard was that staff and faculty would like to create more of a multi-purpose space here that would allow this to be used for indoor recess, someplace for practicing chorus, someplace to do yoga, and then of course the theater itself. So we looked at this box of space, which the vertical lines that you see going through the top are trusses that support the span over the building. But what we found is that we believe there's space enough to create something a little more evocative. We should go on to this. And so what we're thinking is that we create a permanent lower level space dedicated to chorus, which is about how many feet, Rena?
It's about 800.
It's about 800 feet, with a fixed slope seating above it. And then this also would use the idea of retractable seating, which you see in the next slide. And we would get rid of the stage per se and level the floor. So you get one big level floor, which can function as a stage, as we did at Hillside, or as a much larger multi-purpose space for dance or yoga or whatever ever wants to happen in there. And we're exploring this now to make sure that we have room to do it. But the first cut seems to be promising. We're working with H2M on this, and we think we have a shot at actually doing this. So you're creating some new space and really getting a very flexible space as a result. And then the plan of this is it in its stage iteration. The plan cut is right through the lower level chorus room, but showing the lower level seats and the stage proper. And then the next image, then these are the seats retracted for the larger space, which is how many square feet? Overall?
It's 2,500 square feet.
So it's a really nice big space. And so we're exploring this as a way to kind of have your cake and eat it too solution. And you know, it looks promising right now, but as we develop this with our collaborators, we'll keep you posted on how it works. But we've done these types of things before, where you have less of a control room. You have go back to that slide. This is showing the upper level right now, where we have the control booth out in the open, mechanical space towards the back, and then fixed seats, raked fixed seats up above, looking down onto the big double height space. And then again, this goes back to that same model where you do have the flat floor auditorium, which does work very well. And here's some other examples of it, work that we've done actually. So this is some preliminary thinking here on how to make more of this space than a simple auditorium.
So most of the use of this space are kind of full grade level events. So the Invention Dimension and the Shakespeare unit, and so some of those require seating and some of those require more of a flexible space. But this is really geared towards being able to seat 2 grade levels for an auditorium space, but really to be able to make the best use out of the full grade level events that happen throughout the school year.
About how many kids could have indoor recess in there if the seats are pulled back?
So we're still working with H2M to determine the maximum capacity, because there are the 2 existing stairs there now, and that the load that those 2 existing stairs can take really limits the load of people that you can have up there. So I think we're about in the 350 range.
But that would be fine to accommodate indoor recess, because they don't take it all at once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They sit, yeah, so that would be.
That's great. This is so clever.
I know.
It is, right?
I know.
This is creative and clever.
And one of the things that we determined when we were working with the programming phase was that we hadn't really figured out a good space for Jonathan Riss for his chorus room. And the idea, with the way he's currently using the space, that was kind of one of the pieces that had to be addressed. And this design, I think, does a good job in creating that classroom space in the back, because if not, we would have had to find Jonathan Riss a classroom somewhere. And this actually accommodates for that use too, which is great, which initially we hadn't factored that in, I believe, right?
And that classroom space can also.
Doubles the dressing room, yeah.
Right, a dressing room or significantly more backstage area, which you don't have the space for currently on the stage side, so I know that's.
That was important too,
yeah. It's really important for the drama department.
Yeah, I think this is great. I mean, I was not a huge fan of just the auditorium. I thought it was a little bit of a waste of an opportunity, and this is really great. I really appreciate you and H2M working together so closely on this. I know it's not always easy to get two companies to work together, but it seems like you guys have done a good job. So I'm excited about if this actually works out and finding out the next step.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful. It really is beautiful.
So nice.
I know,
really
it's
like
great.
it.
I'm excited.
And Raina didn't mention, but she also went to Hastings.
Yes.
right?
Yes, she did. Yes.
That's why she's so impressed.
It's special to do something for, a town that you know as well, so very nice. Very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are we now?
Was that fun? I know. Have you been to the current incarnation of it? 'Cause my son does his play practice there. The South up there.
This is just H2M, who you also know that we've been working with. They've been working with the district, through the last bond process. And tonight they're also going to present some of the status updates on. Not only they'll give us some update to answer your question, Doug, on some of the timing of the both Hillside and the middle school auditorium, but they're, the roofing projects and some of the other projects that are well underway and what the submittal time, and just to give the board a sense of the progress of some of the overall scope. So this is Tom Danis, and he'll be presenting. He's the project manager, and Veronica Burns.
Thanks everyone for bringing us to present tonight as well. As Maureen mentioned, Tom Davis is my project manager. I'm a partner with H2M. We've been working with the district since 2011 or something like that, and worked with the district in bond in 2014. And we're excited here tonight to partner with PBDW on these projects. I think they came up with a really creative solution to the needs. So that's a great opportunity for everybody. So we're going to go through the scope of work. Because of the partnership between PBDW and H2M, there's actually 4 projects now that exist, where I think we originally contemplated 2 projects, one at the middle school, high school, and then one at Hillside. And just in the nature of the way the projects are breaking out, and in order to get projects submitted to SED as expeditiously as possible, we've actually split it up into 4 separate projects. So there's 2 projects going on at Hillside and 2 projects at the middle school, high school. And the way they're broken up is that the projects that are strictly infrastructure, roofing, flooring, boiler replacements, things of that nature, are one type of project, and then the projects that we're teaming with PBW on are the other projects. So that's the reason for 4 projects instead of the original 2.
So for the Hillside infrastructure project, this involves replacing flooring in select classrooms and corridors, replacing windows, some of the storefronts, repointing the exterior brick, and replacing some of the roofing. Currently, we've reached our 60% complete set, which we've given to the construction manager. They are doing a cost opinion on that. And then we'll work towards our 90% complete set in October 14th. And then we're planning on submitting up to SED in early November. This will allow us to begin construction in September of 2020.
And actually, before we jump ahead, so the the benefit of getting this up to SED so early is to take advantage of an optimal bid time. And right now, what we're finding is that projects that are bid in November, December, perhaps January, really that's when you get your best pricing. So in splitting these projects up, we're able to take advantage of that and get an early building permit and then get this project out to bid as quickly as possible. Right now, SED has a very short review period of time. It's 6 to 8 weeks. So originally, when we developed the budgets for the bond, we prepared for a third-party review, which was an additional cost. We may or may not, or you may or may not have to take advantage of that third-party review based on the review times when we actually submit. But I will caution you that from history, that typically the review periods, the review times do increase as you get later in the year and into January, February, March, April. And that's typical. Everyone's submitting their projects, trying to get them done, trying to get the building permits. But right now, we're seeing real short review periods of 6 to 8 weeks, and that's with SED. The third-party review time is averaging 40, I believe 49, 47, or 49 days, which essentially is about the same time period, 6 to 8 weeks. So at this point, there would be no advantage to go to third-party review and pay that additional cost because of the third-party review. But we'll continue to monitor it. We meet with the district regularly, and we continue to talk about that and look at those dates. And so we'll make sure that we take advantage of whatever the best opportunity is when it's time to submit to SED. Actually, I'm just going to say one more thing about that. Part of the reason why we have it broken out into 30, 60, and 90% is that we want to give the opportunity to the district to comment at each phase of the design and buy into it, support it, and then we move into the next phase. And part of that is the cost estimate that Triton does prepare. That's an important part of the work. So that's why there's a cost estimate that's going to happen with each one of these phases. So as we mentioned earlier, we're going to be starting with 30% cost estimates for some of the projects.
You said we could start construction in September or the summer?
It'd be the summer of 2020 on the infrastructure project for so that's not the addition, it's just the infrastructure of the existing building in summer 2020. For the middle school, high school infrastructure project, that involves replacing boiler, replace select flooring, the roofing, replacing cornice and parapets, exterior brick veneer, and replacing the loading dock elevator. We are actually at our 30% complete now. We'll be giving that to the CM this week for a cost opinion on the work that we've done so far. And then we'll keep on working towards the 60 and 90, and then submit to SED early January. And that will set us up for construction to start in September of 2020.
So it says construction duration. Does that mean start and finish, or is that just start?
The goal is
for these two?
Do that work over the summer of 2020.
Everything ready by September?
So, yeah. And as we get further into it, and if worst case scenario, the SED review period is longer and it gets bid out later, then we'll look at ideas on how to perhaps break the work out into 2 separate summers. But the goal would be to get the infrastructure work done over the summer. I think the most complicated part of this project is probably, well, it's a taller building, so it's a little bit more in terms of the phasing of it and replacing the cornice, but the lead times for the boiler. So as long as we know that we can get that boiler done in that first summer, then that's the goal.
So if we're looking at this, I imagine we want, before we go out to bid, we want both of the SED submissions back for both of these. And so if we're looking at 8 weeks from there, are we essentially out of a window to get the best pricing?
That's a great question. You may be at that point. Yeah. So I don't know, Kevin, if you want to. So Kevin Sawyer, Triton Construction.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I really didn't think I was going to have a speaking role tonight.
Sorry.
That's okay. First, just let me say that I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I look forward to working with both your teams here and get the project done on time and on budget. That's the part that I'm most concerned about. So I'll be working very closely with your architects to make sure the design still stays within the budget that your voters voted on. Okay? So a lot of different things were discussed here in terms of timing and in terms of process. I just want to reiterate a couple of things that we touched on because they are very important. And you actually started doing this exercise tonight, whether you realize it or not. There are specific times through SD, DD, and CD, schematic design, design documents, and construction documents, which are essentially about 30% design completion, 60%, 66 design completion, then 90, 99% design completion. At those various stages, all the fine folks behind me are going to make a presentation to the board to do exactly the same thing that they did today, and that is to get an acknowledgement from you that they're all moving in the right direction. It's very important. And then what that does is that allows me to start doing the cost estimating to see where they are and make sure we stay focused within our budget guidelines, okay? There are, depending on what you bid, various good times to bid, and there are bad times to bid. The closer you get to the summertime, particularly for work that you plan on doing this summer, and a lot of that is infrastructure related in most cases, you want to try and get that bid out as quickly as possible. Now, it doesn't always happen. In most cases, a lot of school districts are trying to get all these projects through SED through the late winter months and early spring, so they can go out to bid. So there's some challenges there. You can bid anything you want at any time. The question is whether or not it's the best time to bid for pricing. You asked a very good question. So certain things are easier, and we have actually been having some discussions about this. For instance, roofing. If we can take roofing and we can break it out into a separate project and send that out early. I know from experience, we just got done putting in $11 million worth of roofs in 3 school districts this summer. And we realized some really good costs because we bid them in, one was in November,
December.
and one was in December. So what tends to happen is that contractors will add a couple of percentage points every month as you get closer to the summertime. That's one aspect of it. And then the second aspect of it is good contractors are going to want to get all their work in early so that they know what they're looking forward to in the summer. So as you move forward, closer and closer to the summertime, your list of select contractors tends to thin out. So part of what all of us will try and do is, because we've done a lot of work in this area, is try to attract good select contractors to bid your projects. So we've already had discussions with roofing contractors and mechanical contractors for your boilers and things like this to get them excited about your project as well. Okay. And then we'll try and do the best we can based on when the SED approves these projects to get them out as quickly as possible. If as a group we decide that it is a bad time to bid on something, we'll find another time that works better than that. You know, we're definitely going to be in construction here through the summer of through the school year of 2021 and the summer of 21. So you do have 2 summers that you can get some things done. All right? And that's pretty much the overall schedule, but I know you guys have some more details, so thank you.
I mean, we had talked about the concern on this package going up at that time frame, because I think, you know, the earlier package at Hillside is definitely a preferable time frame. This one is a little concerning because that would mean we would not get approved till possibly March, which then you have to go out to bid for another 30 days, which would mean that we would miss that opportunity to do that work in the summer, the roofing. Well, miss it.
In March, if you
But we wouldn't be able to.
March and you'd be awarded by end of May.
Right, I know, but you were talking about the price escalation, which we've been through before. So, I mean, you're talking about that could be like a 15 to 20% price escalation between November and May with, just for all the things you mentioned, like not having quality contractors. So is there any way that could be pushed back, I guess is my question.
Well, one of the things that we're looking at, and things we've been talking about is if there's perhaps an opportunity to split this project into two.
That's what I was
actual
thinking.
projects
I was going to say,
doing-
why couldn't we take the boiler out? Because even, I think Joe had mentioned, some of these items, the repair to the cornice and parapets, I would say is like critical, as well as the roofing here. The boiler, as we identified, although the age is, something we should have planned for, it is still functioning. So I think breaking out that to a separate project would be advantageous to us.
We're at the point now where we could talk about that. We're not that far along in the documents where we would potentially
I
split
think that
up.
makes sense.
And that actually, it speeds up the time to prepare the documents because we're not, if that's becomes strictly an architectural project, then there's an opportunity to pull that schedule forward. So we can continue to talk about that. Sometimes there's an opportunity, I know you mentioned, Doug, about waiting for the one project to have a building permit to bid the other one. Sometimes that's a good strategy, and at other times you may end up being better off having multiple contractors doing the work as opposed to awarding all the work to one contractor. We were fortunate with the last bond that we happened to have a very good contractor, and he was able to do all of the work. I believe the square footage this time is actually more than last time, so it may be advantageous to have multiple contractors get it done. So the roofers can only, just like anything else, they can only take on so much work over a summer, and it's important that they can start it at the end of June and finish at the end of August, and that's it. We got to make sure that you're all buttoned up and watertight when school starts again in September 2020.
Keep us in the loop if there's decisions we can make to accelerate anything. And I think that idea of a boiler, we talked about that, and
We weren't even going to do it initially.
Right. So okay.
And then for the Hillside edition, the presentation that you just saw, we're right at the 30% mark with the approval of the presentation. That's going to go out for a cost opinion, and then we'll continue working all the way through April to get these wrapped up. And then in May, we'll send it to SED. Plan on construction in the fall of 2020 through fall of 2021.
And this is actually an ideal time, that this May submission to SED is ideal because then we're back into the cycle where it's a real short review period again. So I would expect, us to be back into that 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 week review period at SED, perhaps having to forego the third-party review and then bidding it late summer for a full start. So.
Again, just the concern about, it would be better just to be a little bit earlier, right? Because I think we talked about it being a bit earlier now. I'm just again, making a bid process for something so large with I'm just concerned about the price escalation, especially with as we go out in time.
We're going to do, the entire team is going to work towards tightening the schedule as much as possible.
Well, I don't understand that though, Maureen, because this one wouldn't start till the fall.
Well, but again, the idea that it wouldn't be submitted to the week of 5/18, and initially we had talked about being able to mobilize. I think we talked about it's going to be really important for a contractor to be able to mobilize their equipment and their materials in August, which, correct? Having people come in with heavy-duty things in September, October is never going to happen. So the mobilization of that contract has to happen in August, which if you back up the timeline, and again, gets me a little nervous to hope that in 2020 that the review period would still be at 6 to 8 weeks. Even if it were to be at that time frame, now we're talking about bidding in July to award in August for the mobilization of that. And my concern is that may not, it would seem to be very difficult, because I would think it would take them more than a few weeks to do that. Even with the fields, the mobilization was significant, and that was a much smaller scale project. So I'm just concerned about if that, even sometime in April, would probably help us a bit.
We're going to continue to monitor it, we're going to continue to work together, and every time we're able to shrink a period a little bit or get an approval quicker or whatever it happens to be, then that's all going to, we're going to, the schedule is fluid, and the idea is to pull forward what we want to give you, what our best estimate is at this point.
And for the middle school auditorium and the high school music suite, the schematic designs are getting put together now. They're following the elementary school addition, and we are planning to put those out at the same time as the elementary school addition. So with the submission to SCDOT about the same time. The construction will be over the fall of 2020 to the fall of 2021.
There's no problem with occupancy in this building with that?
With the construction going on during, I
Mhm.
think as long as it's staged properly and it's a separate contractor's entrance.
That's a great question, too. So I'm actually meeting with Joe tomorrow to walk all the building sites so we can start developing a logistical plan and a safety plan. Obviously, that we have a lot of concerns with working right up against your new buildings or completely inside them. We want to make sure that we don't affect any of your egresses, any of your standard safety procedures and things like that. We have to have some place to set up logistics and where that's going to be, like materials as well as manpower vehicles, those types of things. So there's obviously, and we're in motion now to start developing all these plans with your input. And we will eventually present them as part of the drawing set. So you will see those ideas and obviously chime in when that time comes if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
I don't know if I missed this point, but how do the cafeteria or the auditorium, they'll do that during school, right? While kids are in?
Yeah.
We'd like to, yes.
So how do they do that without the noise affecting the other classrooms?
That's what we're going to start doing right now. And if we have to, I'm sorry. If there are some portions of the project that we have to do over the summer specifically, just because of the type of work that it is, whether it's noise related or difficult to do with people around, we'll have to pick certain times of the year to do that. That could be after school hours, that could be on, there's a lot of holidays that we take advantage of all the time, or if we have the opportunity to use the summertime.
And that's built into the schedule. The contractor will know what they're bidding on when the project is advertised. So they'll understand that there's going to be no blackout days. One of the things that we always do in projects that run over a school year is we make sure that we know all your testing days, and that's written into the specifications. So there's absolutely nothing going on during any critical testing days or things of that nature.
So can I ask just kind of, I don't know a lot about construction, but I'm imagining,
That's why you hired us.
I'm imagining excavating is the first thing you have to do, and that's pretty noisy. And so if we're starting September, how does that actually work?
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to condense the schedule as much as possible to get that started before the school year. But I think we have to let Joe and Kevin and Tom and everyone work together and come up with what that plan is in order to phase it in such a way.
I guess from that perspective, like as I sit here as someone who doesn't know construction management, but just the layperson's look, it seems like that's not actually possible. Because what are we going to do in the fall of 2020?
That's kind of my concern with the time. Like I think we need at least a month in the summer.
Right.
Well, we potentially, I guess we could, we have not discussed this, but we could talk about the way the contracts are phased, and perhaps there's a, just thinking out loud, and this has not been discussed yet, but potentially awarding a contract earlier that perhaps they do sign after we can do that. I think we need to continue to work on it and condense it as much as possible.
Okay. Is there any other questions anyone on the board has?
So thank you. I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot of the architects, I think, in the upcoming months. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe give an opportunity for anyone who wants to leave to go now. I know there's a lot of different.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all of your work.
Yes.
Don't forget your.
You're going to go to 4.
Go right into superintendent.
It is exciting. You're going to do new business and do the approval of the proposal.
I didn't know if that's what
You're doing new proposal, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Ginny, we have to do an official vote on those? Do we have to do, or it's a resolution that we have to vote on?
There is a business item to approve the architect and management proposal. It's your next item.
Right.
Number 4.
Right, okay. Yeah, so I guess it's just a resolution written in here, okay. So given what we've just seen, item 4A, architect and management proposal, I guess we need a motion to pass that resolution. Do I have a motion to pass that resolution?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, thank you, Bob, for staying here for a while. Appreciate that. It was hard juggling so many presentations, but up next, we've got Bob Hartz here from Super Eval to talk about evaluation system. I don't know about
Sure. I already have your video. I know Bob in Super Eval from my last district where this was the instrument that the board of education decided to use to evaluate me. So it is completely digital. It allows a mid-year evaluation, which is a conversation. The most, I think, helpful part of this is that all of the evidence can be uploaded to the domains that are part of a research-based rubric that any superintendent, not only in New York State but anywhere, would be judged against those particular standards. It's also helpful to boards of education, particularly new board members, to get a sense from the rubric of the activities or the actions that a superintendent engages in. So it's also a very helpful teaching tool for boards of education. So I used it for 2 years. It was very helpful, very easy to use, very user-friendly. The Board of Education obviously felt who was as varied and vast in different, in terms of background and experience as you are. We're all very comfortable using it. There was very little I guess startup time in terms of learning it, and Bob would provide that session for the Board of Education. We could presumably do that maybe at one of our executive sessions coming up in the next month. The end-of-year evaluation component, again, which is the most significant part of it, is an actual review process, which you'll see in the video, allows each board member to be independent at the same time that the tool calibrates kind of like where the preponderance of evidence is, or the evaluation rating is. And as I said, I think it's extremely useful and helpful, and it minimizes any effort on the part of the board in terms of trying to find something, use something. It's all done, and many more and more districts are using this tool, and in the region. As I said, I can certainly vouch for it as being a very user-friendly tool and something that I think we ought to seriously consider.
Right.
So, Bob.
Thank you very much for your time, and your presence tonight, and board trustees and admins here at Hastings on Hudson. Thank you, Dr. Henning Piedmont, for inviting me down here. Came in from the City of Good Neighbors, Buffalo, New York.
Oh, wow.
And have a couple of meetings in Nyack tomorrow. So, yeah, thank you for your time.
Can I just have one second?
Yes.
I think just for the public, we need you to use so they can hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your time. But Dr. Henning Piedmont did a great job just describing it. Just to set the context, and this video is about 4.5 minutes long. It outlines the 5-step process of Super Eval. I'm going to start it. I'll have Valerie start it and stop it. I'll stop it before each step. I'll explain what you're about to see in that particular step. Stop it at the end of each step and ask if there's any questions. So it shouldn't take too long at all. Just to set the context, we're going into our 10th year now as signature partners of the New York State Council of School Superintendents, and so in that time we've gotten to know literally hundreds of superintendents across New York State, one being Dr. Henning Piedmont, and also hundreds of board members, board presidents. And we went to see a presentation by the lead counsel of the New York State Council of School Superintendents, Jacinda Convoy, Jazz Convoy. She put together a group of superintendents to look at best practices in evaluations across New York State and across the country, and they put together this self-reflective, evidence-based process, and they also developed a rubric that outlines best practices in the day-to-day operations, of the superintendent. Problem was, everything was still paper-based. So the superintendents were collecting evidence in 3-ring binders, in folders. When they went to hand it over to the board, they had to make 7 copies of the 3-ring binder. The board would take a look, leaf through the 3-ring binder, make the ratings. Somebody who had to, either the district clerk or the board president, had to calculate all of the scores and roll up all the comments. Well, we've streamlined it online, and so with the click of a button, all of those scores and the ratings are averaged out. Very user-friendly. Everything is in one place. You can upload URLs. I noticed that you use board docs, so if you wanted to reference board docs as a piece of your evidence, you can upload a URL. If you're showing how you communicate with the community, you can upload URLs like from Twitter or Facebook or a web page. So it's quite a user-friendly program. We'll be closing in on about 200 districts in New York State alone using Super Eval. So and then NYSBA caught wind of the good work we're doing, and so now we have a partnership with the New York State Council of School Superintendents as well as the New York State School Board Association. So if you want to,
I'll go right ahead.
Fire that up, and then what I'll do is when you see
Welcome to Super Eval.
See step 1 come up, you can just stop it, okay?
Okay.
But this is just like a little preamble.
To Super Eval. Super Eval is a new way to conduct your annual superintendent evaluations online, saving valuable time for superintendents and school board members. Super Eval creates unique roles for superintendents, school board members, and board presidents, allowing users to access only the information they need to complete evaluations based on standards of excellence. In just 5 easy steps, Super Eval defines a reflective and evidence-based evaluation process. The Super Eval dashboard drives the evaluation process, displaying easy access to the 5 essential steps, completion statuses for each step, and due dates that are defined by the leadership team.
Okay, so if you want to stop it right there, Dr. Henning, that's good. So step 1, this is really just entering in the annual goals. The toughest part about step 1 is developing the annual goals, and it's been recommended between 3 and 5 annual goals. SMART goals, right? It's an acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. 2 key factors in goals, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'll say it anyways, is defining what success looks like at the end of the school year. What can we celebrate? Where do we need to focus? And also, what evidence, describe it right in the goal, what evidence is needed for Dr. Henning Piedmont to prove that she's met the goal. So you're setting clear expectations right from the get-go. So those 2 factors, really, when you're developing goals, is key. So step 1 is, once you develop those goals, it's just entering them into the system. It's just a word type of editor where you do that. Okay, so go ahead.
The evaluation process begins with the superintendent defining annual SMART goals derived from longer-term district and/or board goals. These annual superintendent goals align with the performance evaluation. Superintendents can enter custom goals or select from an example list of goals used by superintendents across the state. Once goals have been populated, superintendents can mark step 1 complete.
Okay, you can stop it here. Yep.
Step 2.
So, any questions about step 1 at all? Yep.
And it's entered at any time, so I would start uploading almost immediately.
Yep. And so step 2, this is really the bulk of the evaluation. This is where the superintendent does a self-reflective, evidence-based evaluation of him or herself, in this case, Dr. Henning Piedmont. And so throughout the course of the year, Dr. Henning Piedmont would be uploading comments, uploading evidence to show the board what she's doing on a day-to-day basis, as well as what she's doing to meet those annual goals and moving district initiatives forward. So really, this is it's like a platform for the superintendent to show the board, what the superintendent is doing to, again, move those district initiatives forward and ultimately to help students succeed. You can choose between the NISCUS rubric, so the council has a rubric with 5 domains and 24 competencies, and NISBA also has a rubric with 5 domains and 29 competencies. We have both rubrics available in Super Eval, so it's one or the other. So, and then, so go ahead, Dr. Henning-Piedmont, if you want to play step 2 here.
Requires superintendents to reflect on each of the 24 competencies defined by the Council's Superintendent Model Evaluation rubric. Throughout the school year, superintendents can supplement their self-reflection by adding supporting evidence to their portfolios with drag-and-drop functionality. The annual goals defined in Step 1 will auto-populate in the last domain. Once reflections are complete for each competency and supporting evidence is attached, the superintendent digitally submits his or her self-evaluation to the school board for review, triggering an email notification to all board members.
Okay, yeah, you can stop it here. Any questions on step 2 at all?
I have some, but it may be easier if we go through the whole thing.
Okay.
Mine are going to be interconnected, I think.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Okay, very good. So step 3, this is, so now each board member gets a notification that the superintendent has submitted the year-end evaluation. So now each board member goes in individually and looks at the evidence that has been provided by the superintendent and then goes and rates the superintendent on the rubric and also can add comments and upload evidence of their own. And so you can do this individually, in the comfort of your own home. You don't have to get together in executive session. I know many of you probably have kids, sports teams, and it's tough to get together. I know during the course of the year, having everybody at a meeting. So this allows the board members to do this separately. And then with the click of a button at the end of step 3, once everybody's done with their evaluation, with the click of a button, all of those scores are averaged up and comments rolled up, where in step 4 you would create that clear, concise, consolidated year-end document. So I'll let Dr. Henning-Piedmont play step.
In step 3, the school board reviews the superintendent's self-evaluation, including the reflections and evidence, before conducting their own evaluations. School board members have the option to start a new, blank evaluation or an evaluation that is automatically pre-populated with the superintendent's rubric responses. Each of the competencies has a rubric identifying 4 levels of the superintendent's performance, with descriptors for ineffective, developing, effective, and highly effective. Board members can also easily reference the superintendent's self-evaluation reflections and evidence. The board president can conduct his or her own evaluation as well as have a real-time, high-level data view of how the evaluation is progressing. This allows the board president to lead the board through the process. Once all board evaluations have been completed, the board president can mark step 3 complete.
Okay, yeah, we can stop it here. So step 4 is where, again, the board sits down in executive session, takes a look at what the average scores are, all of the comments. You can go in and really this is where you distill all of the information in step 3 down into a clear, concise, consolidated document that you would hand to the superintendent or submit to the superintendent through the system. Where step 5, you would have that year-end conversation, what can we celebrate, where do we need to focus. So really step 4 is where you can go in and edit all of the comments, make your final ratings, and then submit a proposed evaluation to Dr. Henning-Piedmont.
Super Eval automatically consolidates all of the school board's evaluation data into a single evaluation, saving time for the board president by eliminating the need to manually collect this data. The board will then meet to review the consolidated evaluations, make any adjustments necessary, and prepare the final evaluation for the superintendent's review. This process is closed to the superintendent. Once step 4 is completed by the school board, it triggers an email to the superintendent, permitting access to step 5.
Okay, you can stop it here.
Super Eval compares the...
So step 5, this is the year-end conversation, what can we celebrate, where do we need to focus. It automatically creates a FOIL document in case there's a FOIL request from the community. It'll also digitally archive the evaluation so that if you use the system year after year and you need to go back a year, you can do that with the drop-down to get to the previous year's evaluations. And then the superintendent adds a digital signature, the board president adds a digital signature, and then that will trigger the next school year's start of the next school year. Up until those digital signatures are applied, you can always go back a step and make edits if need be. So if you have that sit-down conversation in step 5 and there's edits and that need to be made, board president holds the key to go a step back to make those edits. So yeah, go ahead and play step 5.
School board and superintendent evaluation to present a data view that identifies areas of agreement and disagreement, providing an excellent catalyst for discussion. Superintendents have the option to add post-evaluation reflections and comments. At the conclusion of these 5 steps, the superintendent and school board president apply digital signatures to finalize the evaluation. Once the document is signed, the evaluation is finalized, and SuperEval generates a FOIL version of the superintendent's evaluation that can be used in response to any FOIL request. The evaluation is then stored in a digital archive that can be accessed at any time. Get the tool that's vital to maintaining a healthy and efficient leadership team. Super convenient, super efficient, SuperEval.
There's a little cute tagline at the end.
Yeah.
But, so that's SuperEval, and so we started with the superintendent's evaluation, with the board or by the board, and then we've expanded it now so the superintendent is using it with their leadership team, as well as we have the board self-evaluation piece through NYSBA. NYSBA's board self-evaluation rubric is now available if you have any interest in that. We also have that piece available.
I'll kick off with a couple questions. I'm sure others might have them. Maybe just starting from the back forward. Is the document, so we've had conversations over the last several years about what is and isn't foilable.
Right.
And I see that you create a FOIL version. Before that, is what's created a document so that has more detail in it, not the foilable version, but the other one? Is it a PDF that's created as a quote-unquote final review that gets signed?
Yes, so it is a PDF. You can PDF the evaluation at any point in time. So it does create a PDF of all of the feedback comments, the ratings, everything that would go into it from each of the board members. However you put together the evaluation in step 4, however you edit it, that's what gets PDF'd. What gets foiled, and we've worked with 3 educational law attorneys, both with NISCUS and NYSBA, and a couple of local law attorneys in Buffalo. The domain ratings at the domain level only, not the competency level. The ratings of the annual goals, an overall rating, and then a public-facing comment by the board is one voice, and a public-facing comment by the superintendent. Those are the only things that are foilable.
Okay.
So individual feedback comments by the board, any feedback comments from the superintendent about the process to the board, private, those are not foilable, and then all of the competency ratings those are not foilable as well.
Okay, so I think there's a way I just want to understand that a little bit more for a variety of reasons we don't have to go into here. So I think it looks like a great product. The mid-year, is there an opportunity to use anything for mid-year reviews?
There is an opportunity for a mid-year review, and really it's basically a catalyst for conversation. So Dr. Henning Piedmont would submit it to the board. That would allow access for the board to go in and take a look at Dr. Henning Piedmont's step 2. You actually be able to get in, take a look at the comments, take a look at the evidence. Again, what goals are on track that look like we're going to complete, what goals need maybe extra attention. And it's more or less for again, a catalyst for conversation in, how do we stand on our goals. But there is that opportunity for a mid-year review. In fact, we call it a mid-year review. There's some districts that will do it more than just the mid-year. They'll do it like maybe in the end of November, and then again, maybe at the end of February before the year ends. So we call it a mid-year because a lot of the contracts state mid-year, but you can basically open it up at really any point in time.
Okay. I have a few more, but I'll just ask one more and then kick it out to the rest of the group. I know this has not been a popular thing with school districts. It's very different from the corporate world, but feedback from direct reports. Is there an opportunity to get that somehow? And I know sometimes it's not popular with superintendents, at least many I've spoken to. However, I often find that it's a really valuable piece of data to understand how administrative teams and that are seeing and viewing. Mm-hmm. What have your conversations been about that as a component of this?
There's the ability to upload any type of like third-party survey or any type of feedback from administrative.
So you guys, so it's not been part of your product. It's something that you.
Yeah, it really. It can be uploaded into Super Eval and used as evidence by the board, but to this point, it's all about the rubric and sticking to the fidelity of the rubric, and then just making comments and
about that
uploading evidence around the context of the goals and the competencies in the rubric.
Okay. Cost? Is there?
I always like to start off by saying it's BOCES aidable.
Okay.
Which is, I know, it's key, but it's $1,800 with a one-time setup fee of $150. After year one, that goes away. And then if you would like to add on additional evaluations, the cost starts at $549 a piece. Between 1 and 3, it's $549 each. The board self-evaluation is considered one evaluation, even though there's several board trustees. Between 4 and 6 additional evaluations, the price drops to $499, and then 7 or more additional evaluations.
Are you talking about evaluators or the evaluated?
Being evaluated.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you wanted to use it with your team, is that,
correct?
Is that what you?
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And we also have 3 rubrics right now to be used with principals. The MPPR, Marshals, and Thoughtful Classroom are 3 rubrics that are embedded in Super Eval for principals.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just going to ask some of these questions. If I were kind of watching in the crowd or on TV, I would be thinking some of these things. And I've heard good things about this. I actually was surprised last year when I went to the NYSBA orientation and they mentioned this, and we weren't using it, and we didn't really have a system that we were really using. But it does feel a little odd to kind of have a sales pitch. So I'm just going to ask some questions that I think maybe other people are wondering if they're watching. Just for transparency, I know you have the partnership with NYSBA. Do they get a commission, or what's that partnership all about?
It's a flat sponsorship fee that we don't. Every time we sell it, we don't give them a commission. It's a flat sponsorship fee. It's that same thing with NISCUS. So it's just it's a fee that allows us that, and they give us all marketing opportunities, like through at the convention. We get a booth at the convention. We get advertising in some of their publications. We have the ability to write articles in some of their publications. So it's just it's a flat fee that goes straight to.
Did they choose to promote you guys because they felt you were the best solution, or just because you paid the most for the sponsorship? Because I looked at it as a sort of a validation.
Yeah, no, I think that they wanted to go out and create their own tool, but they heard from superintendents and board members who are using Super Eval, and it really, Tim Creamer, the executive director, approached us and said, look, we wanted to do this. We wanted to build a tool for the NYSBA rubric, but why reinvent the wheel? You guys are, we've heard a lot of great things of what you're doing, and really, between the two organizations, when it comes to super eval, it's all about the health of the leadership team. And there's two factors that go into, the health of a leadership team, and that's setting clear expectations and open lines of communication. And both organizations saw super eval as doing, as providing the ability to set clear expectations and open lines of communication. So that's what both organizations want. They want the superintendent and the board, the health of the leadership team to flourish. And so that's a long-winded answer to say that
That's helpful.
NYSBA actually approached us.
So the other question I have is, I can see people saying, $1,800 just to evaluate the super. Can't you guys just do that for free?
Yeah.
So I think I know what the answer is, but I'd love to hear you just explain why this is not just $1,800 to evaluate a superintendent.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Well, I think just in the time savings alone, really, between, really when you're coming down to dollar and cents and opportunity costs, I mean, that's one of the, the obvious things, the superintendent spending hours, collecting data, or the district clerk having to make copies, and then the board members yourselves, your time is very valuable. Just in the time savings alone and the opportunity costs, and especially after aid, you're probably looking at $900 a year. Second thing I think is, yes, it's easy to use. Yes, it does save time. But what we've heard from superintendents and board members alike is the richer, more meaningful conversations at the end of the school year between the superintendent and the board about, moving district initiatives forward. What can we celebrate? Where do we need to focus? Those conversations that at the end of the year are just more meaningful. They're deeper. The different data views that you get up, because it's online and it's an online tool, you can see, where board members have rated, the superintendent. So maybe if there's an area of discussion, you can, do that in executive session. It just streamlines the process, I think. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks. That's helpful.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, I think it's certainly seems like a great product, and it seems like I certainly can see the value of it. So we'll make a decision.
Thank you. And Board President Nicole Menor from Ardsley, she used it. They used it last year, and she's more than willing to answer any questions. If the fellow board trustees have any questions, I invited her this evening. She was in business in California, so she couldn't make it. We were going to Skype her in, but we decided against that. But anyways, we can get you other boards in the area that are using it as well. So okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
down.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Good luck with the school year.
Thank you. Okay, I lost my position in my document here. Hold on a second.
After school.
After school clubs. Okay, after school clubs at Hillside. Dr. Henning Piedmont?
Sure. You received some information about Schedule B, which is where the after-school clubs live or approved. This conversation started at another board meeting where we were talking about Schedule B. We're talking about Schedule B from the standpoint of parity and equity. That traditionally there are many more co-curricular activities or extracurricular activities that occur at the secondary level than they would traditionally occur at the elementary level. And since Schedule Bs have been a point of discussion, even before I started, there was some sense of trying to get, our arms around, how decisions are made, the point at which the teachers union is involved, just the process of even considering, at the end of the year, how does a principal and his or her team look at those activities and consider whether, there's some that perhaps they won't run one year, but they'll run the next year? And how do they enlist feedback from the faculty with regards to other kinds of activities that perhaps they may not, be considering, but perhaps through, especially at the secondary level, students, are very, can easily take a survey, for example, to provide some feedback, or however way a school could enlist that feedback. What became clear in just all the discussion was that there weren't as many efforts or activities at the elementary level. So this is a good time to consider perhaps, a process that the Board of Education would like to see added to this. What has already changed is the notion that the principals absolutely have to be a part of the conversation well before, earlier than it has been in previous years. It was interesting that the conversation with, from the union standpoint, the Hastings Teachers Association standpoint, that conversation happened after the budget vote. So around June, July, that was the time to bring forth other recommendations. Certainly in my own experience, it's way too late. So just changing that has been, has significantly made it easier to have the conversation earlier, because it's in everyone's best interest. It's in the principal's best interest, is in the best interest of the educators, as well as a process in the building with the building level union leadership to be engaged in that conversation, so that they're always present at the table. And so that change doesn't cut them out or negate their importance or role. So I would say my proposal to the board is that Melissa, Maureen, and I work with the administrators to have them to develop a process in the building to look at what they're offering, and that would include obviously Amy and John, and consider, are these, are we creating a system, that's equitable, or are we somehow missing opportunities? And I don't want to certainly make recommendations for, what should happen at Hillside. I think that's best held, that those decisions are best made at the schools with the leadership team, as well as others at the school who can, join together and consider what makes the most sense. The other reason to start that now is, again, is consistent with the whole budget development timeline, which will commence around November, and then good decision making can be made, data can be collected, and parents will have a much more, a longer timeline, once decisions are made and the budget vote is approved by our public, to plan for what's going to take place in September. And we won't be, sort of colliding with other events or activities. And if the building level leadership teams then need to talk to other providers or vendors who do make programming available in our schools, that it gives them time to. It's respectful to them as well. So that would be my recommendation to the board with regards to what do we do next. As we consider, how to make sure that there are a balance and a process for, looking at what's offered, not simply just rolling over every year what is offered, but considering and helping our teams to develop that process of review, so that we are considering, other opportunities as they emerge for the children, and as I said, at the secondary level, getting input, and at the elementary level, getting input from parents.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Anyone have any thoughts?
Sounds good to me.
I agree.
Process is our friend.
Process is our friend.
Absolutely.
I think.
Big fan. Big fan.
Me too.
I think the one thing is probably a bit of an obvious statement, but sensitive to, you're working with building leaders, everything trickles down to teachers. There's a sense among teachers that there's already a full stop freeze on Schedule B, so there's already, questions going on. Oh my goodness, are we, what's going on with Schedule Bs? So that's already starting to trickle through the building. So, this is, I mention that because you just, in any kind of initiative like this, you need to be sensitive to the potential interpretation of negative. Anything that's uncertain, change, or otherwise is negative before it's positive. So I think that this is, without question, I think everybody at the table agrees, this is an idea its time is long overdue, and if the three of you are willing to spearhead it, it is absolutely a good thing for the long-term trajectory. It's just for the long-term management and development and running of the district. So it's a good thing. Just be sensitive to the fact that any uncertainty is perceived with a negative slant first and foremost until people come around and understand what's going on. So that's it. Otherwise, go for it.
Just so I understand what you're saying, because the uncertainty, this isn't really about like making huge cuts or changes. It's adding to. Is that what you're thinking about? Is sort of looking at, can we add opportunities to Hillside for, or is it a different conversation than that? Because I've always been struck by the fact that my middle schooler can go to school at 7:30, stay till 6 o'clock, and basically be supervised for free the entire time. Whereas in the elementary school, like after school, you're stuck. Like there aren't that many options.
Yeah, the point that I'm making is not what the purpose of doing this is, and I think the purpose that you're just describing is absolutely right. The point that I'm making is in any kind of large organization, there's a trickle-down effect that happens. There's a telephone effect that happens that all I'm doing is just highlighting to the assembled to be aware of that telephone effect. Already with the start of the school year, there's a telephone effect of people concerned about the existence of Schedule Bs, the inability to get Schedule Bs. That happens. So with a new administrator, a new team going after new initiatives, all I'm saying is be aware of the negative telephone effect that we just want to protect against, because I don't even know if you can quote-unquote protect against it, but just be sensitive to it. And maybe that's as simple as telling building principals to be proactive working with you, expressing the beneficial long-term effects of doing this the right way. And if building principals are out there doing that, and that gets to department heads, and department heads share that with the full staff, now, there's hundreds of teachers that understand why this is happening, as opposed to the more negative spin of, well, I didn't get the Schedule B I wanted at the start of the 1920 school year, and they're looking at Schedule Bs, so therefore A plus B must equal C, which is Schedule Bs are going to be cut dramatically, right? Without any kind of basis in fact. But I'm telling you that everyone here knows that I see heads nodding, like this is the reality of organizational existence. So this is kind of that ear on the street comment, obviously. But I think logically to go ahead and do this, it's a fantastic thing to do. It's a hard thing. I appreciate the three of you saying we want to do it. I think it's a very good thing.
Well, it serves, it'll serve children. I mean, at the end of the day, that's who we are here to serve. To serve them and to make sure that their voices are added. And then to on behalf of young children who are not, at the point, in a position to, advocate for themselves, their parents, to have them involved in thinking about, like, what kinds of things would really be exciting for, children in, kindergarten through 4th grade. And, what would those look like, and how do we manage those? And as we look at the Schedule B, budget code, how can that be equitably divided across the three schools, so that there, it isn't a matter necessarily of, adding more dollars maybe to get Hillside up and going. You do, because you would have to. That's the only way to get that. To add. To have them even close to, being able to have, some, but and it certainly won't be massive amounts like, like the traditional high school or the traditional middle school, where there are many more for a reason. So I think just knowing that there is a process, and it isn't magic. So it takes you out of the loop as being the bad guys. It takes us out of the loop as being the bad guys, because, that is, I think, the overwhelming perception with regards to Schedule Bs. If they, are not approved, as we cut them. And so this really makes, about, establishing transparency around a process that looks, has, as I said, left, I think, a sour taste in some mouths, simply because, they didn't have the key to the code to understand how this even happened. So I look forward to just that, having everyone understand, and having those who may not know. There are probably some educators who don't even know, like, how would you go about making a proposal? And how would the principals be able, well, I think some folks who've been around for a while may not even know, or can I even propose a different, activity. So it just really opens it up and makes it, a fairer system for just, more participation. So that's what it's all about, just ensuring that there are lots of great opportunities for children and across the K-12 spectrum, and that the process for making those decisions rests at the school level.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing.
Just one addition to, besides what's offered, maybe looking at the times that a certain program is offered. That changes in Hillside compared to middle school. But how often does X club need to meet in order for it to really take hold and for kids to develop that skill that the club is intended to work on? That's something that I definitely see fluctuating a lot in the middle years. So
I'll share that with the teams, the leadership teams. Thank you.
Okay, so on to 5C.
Proposed topics?
Proposed topics, which I think I missed. I think I looked this morning, so I think you maybe added these. So
I did.
So if you didn't see it, there is an attachment here to board members, which is quite robust, so that's great to see. Do you want to just talk a little bit to it? Or?
Sure. In terms of the thinking, and the board had asked me to prepare a proposed list of presentations for the upcoming board meetings for the remainder of the year. So these reflect some thinking with regards to like an earlier, I guess, a conversation that, a suggestion that I had made to the board, which is, we really do need to make sure that our building leadership teams, teachers, and students are coming to the board meetings and presenting, their work or some snapshot or spotlight of their work, so that it isn't always a secondhand or third-hand, portrayal of that work, but that we actually have the students here, or the educators here, or the administrators here. So our first presentation with our leadership team will be at our next board meeting on the 23rd. And that will be a pretty robust presentation, because they're not only talking about their goals, but they're also talking about some of the projects or efforts that they've been nurturing for a while. And so this is a way to give you an update on some of that work and what they expect to be focusing on in the coming school year. And that'll include, obviously, Laura and Tespa, who will be presenting feedback from a conference that they attended over the summer at Syracuse University, which will complement the work that they're engaged in, which is to create the least restrictive learning environment for all of our students with IEPs. So every administrator will be present, and obviously Melissa, Maureen, and I are also engaged in that presentation. And that presentation will occur at different times during the year. So there'll be another sort of kind of an update at midpoint, and then at the end of the year, kind of a celebration, reporting out on what they've achieved and what the success has been around the efforts that they've been nurturing and spearheading.
Doing that, all the administrators at one meeting?
Yes.
And then, okay.
Yeah, it's to see the system as a K-12 system, in my experience, that's the only way to see it. Because over time, you really should see themes and patterns and occurrences of some of the same kinds of understandings. Now, it'll be early for us, but over time, that's the way to get a picture of the system and to see the connections across the different transitions. I know parents talk about transitions, so where is it that this thing that started, or ended in the 4th grade is actually continued in the 5th grade, or from the 8th grade to the 9th grade? As I said, that's what you'll see are the efforts that you are certainly familiar with, but you'll hear them talk about those efforts. You'll hear them talk about some data as well, and opportunities with regards to the spring assessment data for us to I think, take a more active role in data analysis. And Melissa and I have been talking a lot have been talking about that. That's been our background and experience as we look at gaps and closing gaps early and ensuring that every child has an experience where they're being exposed to, the rich curriculum and opportunities to share and show us what they can do. So you'll see throughout, as you've noticed, the construction project update. That's at every meeting. As you know, Maureen is deeply involved in this, so there'll be something that's stated, and that's also that also serves one of our goals, which is to make sure our public is knowledgeable and aware of all of the work that's underway with regards to the construction bond and project. Oops. October is the October 7th meeting is a pretty important meeting. Melissa and I met with Joanne Reed-Stokes, who works with the Hastings Youth Alliance, and every year in every county, 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders take a survey in their health or phys ed class. And it's a survey about their, risky behaviors. Not to say that those taking the survey are engaged necessarily in risky behaviors, but you get a sense of drug activity, drinking, vaping, whether they're in a car with someone who's under the influence, and it's self-reported. They don't have to to share their name. So, you're getting some pretty accurate information in my experience. I'm familiar with it from my last district. And it's really helpful for the school system to know that this exists, and most importantly for our clinicians and administrators to know, because it helps them to assess what they are focusing on as areas of need from the standpoint of objective data that's collected from students all around the county. So so Joanne will present that information at the same time, and she's also presenting it to the town, or the village, or I should say the town, so that in the event you hear about it, know that she's coming to us on the 7th to share that. Some of the things will be shocking, some won't. Just because it's, you've heard a lot of things, we've seen a lot of things in the news, but as I said, it's very helpful to have something tangible to actually build some plans around to restructure efforts that are underway or just to add on. At the same time, Jeanette will make a presentation on the school counseling plan and an advisory, which were mandates that were put into place last year from New York State. There has to be an advisory that's created. Board members would serve on that advisory. And it's to really make sure that the K-12 plan, it's really to ensure that the K-12 plan is operationalized, the K-12 counseling plan is operationalized and effective. So she'll be talking about that. She's still working on finalizing the K-12 plan, and that will make that available, and we're to bring, she'll share that, and we'll post it on our website so that everyone's aware of it. And I know there have been conversations about, or questions about transitions, again, what happens in the counseling, from the standpoint of the counseling experience at the elementary level, the middle level, into the high school. What are the differences? What are the similarities? Who's talking to whom, and how is that all coordinated? The website is in the throes of being redesigned. Ellen Lane of Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES will have a model to present at our October 7th meeting. And Jean Benitez, who's a project manager from Lyric, will also be presenting a plan for how we're going to manage providing or creating a redundant connection, so that if ever we're, one of the utility companies hits a line that disconnects us from internet, that we're not down for 2 days or down at all. So it's a pretty significant redundancy. So she'll talk about that and why the decisions were made, along with one of the engineers, to do what they did, and the routing of it, and all the things that they couldn't do, and that how this will set us up to ensure moving forward that we're protected. Jesse Merchant will come in, will be here on the October 21st meeting, again, to just give you some update on the athletic and physical education program that's underway. He's very busy with, and obviously a program that's very important to our students and our families. I think it was Jody who asked about the school-based management teams. Since we're seeing the administrators on Wednesday, we'll talk about that, since that's something that certainly historically has been very important. It's a decision-making team at the building level with the administrator, focusing on a project that could benefit the school community, and that's worked on for a full year. So we'll see what the systems version of that is through that presentation. Going into November, again, construction, but I also thought it would be important for Melissa at this point in November to bring forth some kind of sense of the work that's been underway and meeting with department chairs and content leaders, and share some of the conversations and the thoughts that they're having about the work as it progresses and moves forward. I talked to Jeanette about establishing a social-emotional learning curriculum, which is very important, so that we all sort of have a sense of what happens universally for all children, which would be Tier 1, and then the other services that are necessary for children who might need some other supports to be successful or to overcome a challenge or a trauma or stress or anything that could be affecting them, and it's obviously that affects them academically. So that'll be something that we look forward to developing this year. November, I thought would be a good opportunity to kick off what I'm considering or calling the Student Educator Spotlight. There's a lot of really amazing work going on. Always is. And this, and having it come here, so that you as the board members get an opportunity to see that is something that I think our educators and our administrators are going to be very happy to ensure takes place. Again, a construction project update during the month of November. Let's see, December, again, continues construction updates, but also additional spotlights. December 16th being the end, we'd ask the schools to kind of, either, to identify students to do something musical or something festive, which I thought, would be something that all of us, would warm all of our hearts. Or tell us about things that they're doing to help others. There are lots of children participate in, charities and donations, and so I think to come and talk about that too, and how they've done something that's really made a difference for a family. So I think that's something all of us would be delighted to hear them talk about. So rounding it to get into January, since SEPTA and the PTSA do such great work, I thought you'd love to hear some of that work and have them, invite them to this meeting so that they can share some of those updates. And again, a construction update. The first budget meeting actually occurs on January 27th. That's the schedule-ish, more or less. Is it a January one, the initial one?
Yeah, I mean, typically this one will be just a very high level, and then in February is when we get a little bit more into the details. At that point, we may not get fully into like the line by lines. But
yeah, no, this is the beginning, the kickoff. There's a whole series mandated by the state of New York, so we follow that, and that's you see the first iteration of that process that we're following, like every other district, is in January. Another construction update. And Maureen and I will be looking at the development of our Budget University series, which we're aiming for around November, as a way of providing some essential background knowledge to the community about how a school budget is developed, what a school district has control over, what it doesn't have control over, where the monies are, why they have to be there, and understanding that a school district is a service industry, and everyone in the district is covered by a contract. And every year those contracts have to be honored. So that will be pretty helpful, and we'll develop that plan and publicize that information so that it helps the community that may not be as involved with that to understand what happens during the formal and official kickoff of the budget presentations that, as I said, start in the end of January. More spotlights and instructional spotlights are really important, in my opinion. As we talk about the budget, it's a reminder to the public that that is why we have a budget. We're educating children, and to have the administrators, the educators, and children come to the board meeting at that time to also just share with us, what it is that they're doing, something that they're excited about, some project, some passion project, is a great way to kind of juxtapose these numbers with real evidence of work that the numbers support. So that's something I think that would, we'd all benefit from. A curriculum update is in there around March 30th. Again, is another opportunity to feature some of the work that's happening. That Melissa is leading with groups of educators and department heads and our administrative team. April is the budget adoption, and Maureen and I will tag team on these presentations. I've done them in the past as superintendent. I actually enjoy them. It's a strange thing, but they're pretty interesting because it's just it's a different way to tell the story about the system. I thought a student performance of some sort would be, again, as another way to constantly keep out in the forefront with our public that all of this is in service to children. Everything that happens is in service to children. May is a budget hearing, and again, another spotlight, some more construction update information. May 19th, the budget vote is the 20th, Maureen?
No, it's the 19th.
It's the 19th,
yeah,
okay.
It's that Tuesday, it's that third Tuesday.
Then, okay, and then, so that is, I'm sure there'll be lots of performances that we'll have going on, so that one I'll have to shift what I have planned there. There's probably musical performances in the buildings to get, to incentivize parents to come out.
I think they're a tradition, we have to look at the calendar. There had been like there was a spring concert possibly that evening.
Well, what we do is a district-wide art
Oh,
show
art show.
in the gym, in the Cochran gym. They
Uh-huh.
split the gym off where half the gym we put barriers up for the voting and the other half is the district-wide art show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's whatever makes sense, but typically it's, it's another opportunity to get parents to come out because they always love to see, the work of their own children. And again, it's another opportunity to celebrate, so they'll make that adjustment there. So the graduation recognition and accolades, typically that's when we're hearing where our students are going and whether, who are, our finalists, for various prestigious national awards. In my experience, that meeting around in that neck of the woods is an important time to do that. They're all in any kind of recognition, the athletic recognitions, academic recognitions, you name it, anything that perhaps a teacher is doing or an administrator, this would be a time to celebrate that. On June 1st, I thought it would be a great opportunity to honor Sept and PTSA. It typically is around that time. There's what I've asked in the past, which I think is probably something that our team would be amenable to hear in terms of the administrators, is to have the administrators to gather things from the schools as a way of recognizing the Sept and PTSA leaders. Usually it's collections of artwork, cards, something that's made that really shows it's a true well thought out gesture of appreciation for all of the work done by Sept and by the PTSA, which is really incredible. So that's sort of what I've had in mind for that. And our schools is sort of like a culminating presentation by the leadership teams in the building. A way of celebrating what they've done. And as a way of kicking off perhaps some of the things that they'll be looking at and focusing on in the new school year. And then on June 15th, it's tenure recognition and retirement recognition. It's also the opportunity for the Hastings Education Foundation to present the awards, and another construction project update. So those are pretty much the kinds of things that I've personally traditionally have been involved in as superintendent in my former district, that I think are ways to balance out a business meeting by also always making it clear that this business meeting is about children.
It's great. I really like the intentionality that you've taken and really thinking through a lot of these different topics, and it's very helpful for me, and I'm assuming for the other board members as well, just to see that level of kind of proactive thinking, and as you said, bringing the children in, which, for a variety of different reasons is not something that, since I've been on the board, we've done a lot of, and probably to our detriment. I would say most definitely to our detriment, because it can kind of make us forget sometimes why we're doing this. Obviously, we all go home and remember very quickly while we're doing this, but, while we're sitting here, it's all about the numbers. So, as far, if anyone's got, some specific thing they had a question about or an addition that they wanted to see.
I think it's great too. I love having the sort of everything laid out. One thing I'd love to see at the next one when the administrators come, we had that vaping presentation in June or maybe May, and as we know, it's not going away. There's like deaths now, and I know Lou had talked about everything they did this year was going to be lockstep with the middle school, so I'd love to see the middle school and high school talk about what they've done for the beginning of the year and what their plans are, but really understanding how everything that's happening in the high school is also happening in the middle school, because we had talked about getting the message out to kids a lot earlier. I don't know if that's 6th grade or 7th grade or 5th grade, but it seems like that definitely was something that they were looking to do.
Absolutely, and that is very much part of the work that Jeanette was going to be spearheading in the SEL presentation, because again, that's very much connected. That's one of the sort of ways that some children cope with certain things that are happening to them as they choose, to vape, or that just talking about a notion of looking at an addiction, a nicotine addiction, not as a traditional punishment, but let's help the child. So those would be, some important considerations for looking at what those plans are, that they're not reactionary, that they have to be, as you said, Jeremy, thoughtful and long-term and connected across the system. And believe it or not, I mean, I don't know if Dr. Stephen Dewey was ever in the district, but he's a very popular doctor who's made many presentations around in the Lower Hudson region. And part of his presentation, I mean, he makes them to children, to families, to educators. His largest, clientele are actually 9 and 11-year-olds. So they're getting started much, sooner. And parents need to start looking at, where is it? They're not starting, just in, 6th grade and or the 9th grade, but it's, it's much earlier. And I think education obviously is a very important way in which we can address this, but also to look at the notion that students, high school students or teenagers are ingesting huge dosages of nicotine, and they need our help in a different way.
Valerie, the only thing with Jesse, he does present the sports awards 3 times a year, so we can get those dates and incorporate that in here.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, because I see you do have it at the end of the year, but unless we were to, how he's been coming each season, so. That's a good size presentation.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, having attended those, some kind of highlight of each season, which is really, probably the most beneficial, because if you're not able to go to each of those at different times, and there's just such a wide array everywhere of student athletes, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so getting those in, that'd be good. And I imagine that this is kind of directional, like 75% directional, but things will change and move. But this is great. I do like the spotlights, which I think just brings home very specific things that are going on that sometimes, if our kids aren't in those grades, we miss. We don't really see. So, okay. If anyone has any thoughts or questions, reach out to Valerie and let her know about different presentation ideas, and things of that nature. Do you want to move on to the book study? 5D, is that something, Valerie, you wanted to mention?
Sure. As you know, I place a high value on, the educators and board members reading, current important books associated with our profession. And one of the ones that is the first book that I'm going to be hoping that we have participants to join book studies is What School Could Be by Ted Dentersmith. I think that the board should also participate in book studies as part of our norm of, being getting out of the reactionary mode, right? That, if we're thinking about, the future and thinking about, what the system could be or what you envision it to be and how we're benchmarking and aligning what we're doing with, this preponderance of evidence that suggests that, there's a totally different world that children are going to go into. That we, and how do we know whether we are setting up this system up to prepare our children to do that comfortably, and what is that? So the Dentersmith book, I think, is a great book to kick off a conversation, and I would recommend to the board that we institutionalize book studies as part of a work session. And that it's, we use a part of the time when we don't have an exec session once a month. Maybe it's, 5:30, maybe it's 6:30, but that would be, I think, a great way to model that we value that practice as well. And as I said, it gives us a chance to whether it's books or articles, any variety of research or, thoughts, so that, it helps us to think about, what, as I said, what the system is, what it could become, beyond some of the, the business items that are associated with a traditional board agenda.
I think it's a great idea.
The book is,
isn't it?
Is like,
you've read it already?
It's incredible.
Like, it's super fast. I'm like, I don't know, halfway through or whatever. You just kind of, it's just like.
Yeah, I read it this summer. And I'd be really eager to talk to you all about it.
And it, we'll talk about it at the book study. It's a great idea, and I think we all start our annual years and academic years with I want to read more books, and then we get into our work lives and everything else, and we look at and we go, oh shit, we didn't read as many as the plan was. So this is really it'd be great.
I say shoot, but
I know.
I would say shoot as well. Usually.
Do we want to pick a date, like October 21 or October 7? I don't know how much people have on their plate, or.
Yeah, let's pick a date, because otherwise we won't do it. So I would say October 21st.
October 21, okay.
Does that work for people?
I may not be here, but.
October 21 to have read What School Could Be.
Could do October 7th, but that's ambitious.
It's a short road.
It's reassuring me.
It's a quick read.
Yeah.
I mean,
You guys want to do
there's a
October
lot
7th,
of great
it's fine.
content, but it won't take you very long.
Maybe time
You
pressure is
fly and
better
you look
for
down
me.
and you go through your Kindle and you're like, oh, 35%. I didn't really realize it was that quick, but.
October 7th is better.
We'll try
Either
about
of those dates are
October
good, you're just
21, I think at 5:30 start.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
October 21, 5:30.
10:21, 5:30.
21st at 5 p.m.?
5:30.
5:30 p.m. Book study, Ted Dentersmith, The What School Could Be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so business items. Does anyone have any when I printed this, there were only 5. Let me make sure that's still the same. 5, okay. Janine, I noticed that there's something executive content which we have to approve, I believe, right? But that's labeled number 4, just for clarity of.
It is number 4.
I see. I got it. Okay. I got confused. I didn't see.
I can't see the same screen. Yeah, it is number 4 though.
Yep, makes sense. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the business items?
I just have one very minor question, but it's really just a technical question for you, Maureen, as to how it works. Sorry, I'm just trying to open this up, but it was basically the process by which it goes from Social Security, employee benefits, New York State, the STRS benefits, and into the contractual expenditure.
Well, this is money that was identified. So just to kind of back up to just last year, when, after the budget was already developed and we made a decision to engage with additional architects to help with this design, there was an understanding that that was beyond the scope of the original budget for the bond. So in order to continue to make that decision, we needed to, we understood coming in both last year, we used some of the funds in last year's budget to kind of offset some of that cost, and then this year, that money needed to move. So once we got into this year's budget and some of these particular codes that were identified, at least at this point of the year, where we feel that we had some additional funds available to us. So there's, looking at what our actual expenditures will need to be in those particular codes, that's where some of that money is coming from. And there may be,
Different codes in the future.
Correct.
You're looking for excesses.
Yeah, and that's why there's, a few, because there wasn't, that much, in each individual, but I'm just kind of taking where we could. But I think then that's what I was mentioning, that there is we are at a point, there may be a few other additional expenditures for testing and that we will have to pay for out of the general fund, but then after that, we're going to have to start taking it, take a ban, because I don't think we'll be able to fund it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're kind of close to closing that gap of overage.
Another question, just on the expenditure report. There's a workers' comp expenditure for, I guess it's month of...
We paid
right. Okay, so it's just it's just a one-time annual, that's your workers' comp?
It's based upon our experience rating and our salaries and the amount of employees we have.
Okay.
And that's
so
how
it's just
they factor.
because I was wondering, was there a claim that we were paying a deductible or something like that, or that's just an annual expense?
Yeah, and there will be, there are four quarterly assessments we also have to pay, but those are very small amounts that, so that additional balance that's available there, that'll end up being spent over the course of the year, but this is our main premium that is paid in the beginning of the school year.
Got it. It's a premium, not a...
You're like, that's a lot.
Well, it's kind of like, was there a claim, and we had a deductible, and what was the claim? Or,
Thankfully, we're in a consortium, so that covers any type of claim that we may encounter.
Great, that's it, those were my only two.
Good. Do I have a motion to approve business items 1 through 5? A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, placement for CSC and CPSC. Do I have a motion to approve these placements?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Any questions about number 7? So appointments, amendments, and leave of absence? Do I have a motion to approve 7A, B, and C? And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, minutes. I noticed, Janine, you added a little bit more meat to the minutes. Yeah, so that was good. It helped
I
me.
put in next steps where they mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they look great. So now that I actually read them in detail, because it's on there, there's just one little tweak, which is going to be like, man, you're annoying. But so in discussion, presentation C, Schedule B presentation, final sentence, Jody Meyer suggested it might need to be equitable at all grade levels. Jody suggested it might not need to be equitable at all grade levels, so it's just the one not there. I think that was the only, yeah, that was it. Otherwise, they look really good.
And just because Jody's not here, I'm going to agree that I remember her saying it that way.
Yes. Yeah, right, exactly.
It doesn't work.
Right.
With that one change, do we have a motion to approve minutes from August 27th?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Facilities report. Is there further reports, or I think we've been through that?
Yeah, so basically what the entire board saw
What the-
tonight was what we had an opportunity to get a preview of.
Now, okay, no, we got that, all right. I was just confused about where the vote was on the adoption of the architect stuff. We did that in number 4.
So something like that, should we just attach the presentation that we saw as the backup for that meeting?
I think so.
Okay,
yeah.
so I'll just send
Well,
what I
think
had
one
sent
of
to
them
all
was-
of you.
One of them you sent around, but yeah.
But that would
attach.
be the one I think
Yeah.
I would attach, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Old biz, so Director of Digital Systems and Learning. Where we left off last week was, 2 weeks ago, was Valerie had shared a rationale for the position, which at that point was talking about technology. There's been an update to the title, reflecting perhaps more accurately what that role description will be outlined to do and to be, which is Director of Digital Systems and Learning. Do you want to give a brief update?
Sure. The information provided on the board agenda includes a draft of the position. It is, the reason that the name changed is that the Hastings Teachers Association has a title in their contract called Director of Technology. Although it is a person who works with teachers, obviously so that there's no conflict, we'll work with them to make sure that, there's no, that the duties and responsibilities for this role are strictly around leadership, which we don't have currently. And the role is, addresses many of the things that we've been talking about, leadership around, how to integrate tools, what's the role of social media, how to make sure that all of that is integrated into teaching and learning in ways that help our children who are living in a digital age. They were born, they're digital natives, they're going to work and go to college where they're going to have to make decisions around the use of these tools, and this is the best place for them to learn that. So this person's role is not only to manage and oversee all of the different digital tools, but to ensure safety and security and to ensure that everyone, both on the instructional side or the non-instructional side in offices, have the necessary training and tools to be able to use the resources that help them to do the work that they're called to do, as well as to do that work more efficiently and effectively. In the world where almost daily there's some news report about a school system being a target, as I had mentioned in the presentation, at the last board meeting, school systems, financial organizations, and healthcare organizations are the top 3 places that the hackers are targeting, because school systems are sitting on lots of personally identifiable information, not only for children but for adults. And if we have to make sure we have leadership here that is focused on ensuring that all of our systems and all the behavior of adults, it's 95% of the sort of protection is really from the standpoint of adult behavior in the system. It's clicking on, making sure that we train our staff not to click on sites or open email that they're not aware of, and that's generally been how unfortunately some of the compromises have taken places in places that we've read about locally. So we want to do everything that we can to mitigate against that, but we need a technology plan. We need someone leading that. We don't have a technology plan. What school district doesn't have a plan around both the use of the tools and how they're going to help our children, help our educators, but also to ensure that there's coordination K-12 with regards to everything that we're doing. So that's the job description, which is really basically it was integrated into the presentation. Every day, Maureen, Melissa, and I are having conversations about something related to this, the management of the service that we've been using through the Lyric, and that's challenging because there is no one here to actually help to make decisions, day in and day out decisions about the services, about the the way in the management of the resources that are available, which ones we need to use or don't need to use, our inventory of our assets with regards to the technology of the devices itself, who's downloading apps that have not been vetted and are sitting on our network and could potentially be very disruptive and destructive to us. So I can't say enough about the need for this. We mentioned at the last meeting that our Rivertown partner school districts have someone in a leadership role in their district. So we're at this place where we can no longer afford not to have someone who's helping to guide us through this, as someone who's familiar with the ISTE standards, someone who'd be participating in Java-like sessions, that all of the leaders who do this type of job would be attending, so that they're bringing back the best practices. We don't have anyone sitting at that table anywhere, to be able to make sure that we're bringing all that learning back into the district and integrating it and making sure that we're putting those practices into place. So I strongly urge the board to agree for the posting of this position. There's another bit of information with regards to the funding of the position. We looked obviously at where we could find fund or have funds that we could use for this purpose. Our federal grant that we receive, the big portion of it would be covered by that grant, and naturally, every system that we use has some implication for complying with ESSA, for example. So that's why we feel, very strongly about being able to use those funds there.
Is that grant every year, or just the first
every year?
Really?
Forever. Every district in the state of New York receives Title I funds, whether they have what we would consider to be a level of need or economic need or not. Chappaqua, Scarsdale, all of the districts receive those Title I funds because it's based upon census data. So we can count on that funding every year, and this is an approved application of those funds by applying it to this person.
There's not something within our district that's currently receiving this particular pool of funds. It's dedicated specifically to this named position? Okay.
Actually, in the previous year, there wasn't a designation. There was funds, but the funds weren't used. They were rolled over to the next year. Because we'd have to figure out what exactly would make the best use for, what would be the best use of these resources. And this would be a K-12 person who would be doing exactly what we would, need them to do, is help us to make decisions about what types of applications or other resources that we can integrate to support, any student who might be struggling or might need some extra assistance of some sort.
I guess my question is really just a specific funds question. So the Title I funds at the state level are earmarked for a director, an administrator level person in charge of technology?
It could be anyone. All of the title grants are used to supplement salaries. The 611 special ed grant is primarily covers salaries of employees, ranging from clerical staff to administrators to equipment. So it's traditionally what districts use. This is not outside of that. Just as that we've not done it before. We've not leveraged the funds before for this purpose.
Yeah, right. So we didn't, like Valerie said, we didn't earmark those funds this year for any other purpose. There was no, and last year we did start the process, but we were only going to use the money during the summer for additional work, so then we decided to roll it over, and that's why we would.
I'm not really asking the question well. The question I'm asking is, does the arrival of a new person generate incremental Title I grant monies, or is the Title I grant money the same pool of money that existed the year prior and the year prior?
Yeah.
And we're just,
we've used it before, but for other purposes.
Right,
yeah.
All right.
Well, so if we used it before for other purposes, then we would not be, something would be getting
Not
done.
using it, yeah, that's
It's a reduction in some costs.
It's a reduction in some costs, that's the subtext. It's not new money coming in for a new role. It's same money getting
I
redirected.
think everything on this sheet, 155, is all reduction, yeah, it's all reduction.
Yeah, all right.
And it's a better use of those funds.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
So it's, so those particular categories are where we're drawing or using the funds or transferring the funds so that we can have this person in place hopefully by December. The Lyric, the second item, the Lyric Emergent Technology, there was someone in place from Lyric who was working with our district. Lyric decreased that position or eliminated that position. And so those funds were from that. So that's a good use of those monies because that is directly related to supporting the professional learning needs and working obviously with Melissa and the professional learning team to ensure that we have someone who's helping us to make decisions about how to purchase applications or devices that would be a help, as well as themselves not only being available to work with teachers or other users, but to help to build the capacity of others in the district by having them assume some training responsibilities and some opportunities over the summer. And the other is a position that's being reduced as a result of a resignation. That is typically where districts get opportunities, through attrition. So that's what we're using those funds for. And the responsibilities then are going to be shifted to another person who can do them more competently.
I just circle back, apologies, with this federal grant. Since Title I funds are, significant, is there one or two places that you would earmark and say this is the likely area where this money or that this money is being drawn from and being redirected to, just so that we have a better idea of what the trade-off is?
Well, maybe Maureen has a better sense. I can tell you what traditionally it's used for. I mean, districts have a multitude of reasons depending upon the needs of their students. Sometimes it's salaries of reading teachers.
That's what we had used it for years.
Sometimes it's a salary for a director of curriculum. Sometimes it's partial salary for, any other administrative position or teacher position or, any number of resources that would support the needs of a group of students or a school, for example, that might have a larger population of children who might not be reading at grade level, for example. That isn't part of what we have here. This is someone who, the use of these funds would help across any part of our system.
Is it too simplistic to look for a one-to-one relationship?
For this particular?
Yeah. It's just a...
Yeah. I mean, that, I think what Valerie had said, that's, many schools will just kind of earmark a position or use a part of, the funds that, that probably in the past it was earmarked there because it was the easiest for us to make the case that would be a place that they would accept. That would be an allowable, cost, would be the, because you have to create a narrative in how you're going to be using the funds. So traditionally, except for last year, that we did use some of the funds, we used the funds that we received to offset the cost of an existing employee. It didn't cover their entire salary, it just covered a fraction of the cost of their salary in order to just get the money back in the district. But
is this actually representing the decrease in 70 grand in costs? Or those costs are going to still be on the books, they're just not going to be funded by federal grant money?
No, so once the federal grant money comes in, we would then use, either we would charge part of the salary through that fund, so it's a separate fund, or, in the financial statements, which when we review the financial statements in a few weeks, there's...
Not part of the operating budget.
It is not part of the operating budget. That cost would reside in the federal fund, which is a separate from our budget that the community votes on.
Well, I guess the question is then, does something that was in that come out and have to be reflected in the operating budget?
No, because this year with having a new superintendent and last year, so first of all, the whole process changed last year, the issue of filling out the grant. It was a different process than it had been traditionally. It's a new kind of format. And we actually had worked on doing it, but because there were certain requirements that at one point, we did have the meetings and we had planned to use some of the funding this summer, but then when Melissa and even Valerie first came, I said, listen, I think we would just be like using the money to use it, so either we can, like we didn't end up earmarking it, for lack of better words, because without having the leadership team that we knew that was going to be here this year, there are opportunities. Sometimes superintendents have a particular, they'll say, well, this would be great, this would,
So we didn't earmark or use this.
We didn't earmark it, so
Got
our
it.
general fund budget this year is not going to be short if we use it for this purpose.
Okay.
That's
what we all want to know.
All right, that's
In which case, it almost is new money.
It's like additional.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
In years where we
It's
had
meant
a
that way.
defined purpose, this year we didn't have a defined purpose.
Okay.
So on a relative basis, this would be.
Are we off cycle if we're seeking to employ someone in this position now in terms of leadership? I know that, for example, a building leader at this time of year would be challenging to find the right pool. Have you hired for this position in the past, and what would you recommend?
I think that that first and foremost, Hastings is an attractive place to work, and so you're going to have people who would look at this title and say, it could either be someone who's currently operating in some way, either as a teacher or as an administrator. It could be an assistant, director. It could be a current administrator who sees this as an opportunity. So it's completely likely that there are people who would be very interested in this position, and if we're able to post within the next couple of weeks, we can, we certainly would be out ahead of postings that traditionally appear in January for administrative positions for the 2020-21 school year. So it's in our best
Would you
interest.
expect this person to start next school year or start in the spring?
Start in December or January.
But would you feel comfortable if we don't get the candidate pool that's up to snuff with what you feel we need, holding off until next school year?
Oh, we would certainly, review. I mean, if the candidate pool is weak, we are not going to, we wouldn't be looking to choose someone. It's too important. It's the only one, the only leadership position in this area, so we would really need a top candidate for it. So if, we'll post and see what happens, and then from there, we'll interview and go through the process. And if a good candidate emerges, we'll bring them forward. But if we don't have a pool of candidates that, we feel is, really, going to serve our needs, then we'll repost again.
Because I personally, for one, would rather, deal with the challenges of being another 6 months without this position rather than make a decision on, the wrong candidate to keep the seat filled, which I think we all agree on, but sometimes you can get caught up in the heat of looking at resumes and say, well, maybe. So I think that's a great point to raise.
And I'll just add, on that same theme, just reminder for the board, obviously, Valerie Green, listening, you know this bullet here, expertise in the supervision and evaluation of faculty and staff. It's an important point to make that this person will be hired and becomes an evaluator. So I think as much as critically important as the technology piece of this role is, it's obviously the key. Assuming we get to the point where this is posted and you're interviewing, I ask you to just continue to be sensitive that there's another person going in classrooms who is supposed to have the credentials to go and observe teachers and opine thoughtfully as to how they, how their practice is in the classroom. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. I'm sure you would, but please do, so that we don't overvalue the cybersecurity and have somebody that has no basis making, an informed opinion about how our teachers are performing.
Yeah, I've supervised 2 of these types of people, so I feel really comfortable with the skill level and how to ensure that they're doing the job and the different facets of the job. So if I hadn't been, I certainly would want to make sure that I'm looking at that. But I feel really confident that I would be able to we would be able to direct this person in such a way that they're doing the work that would help the entire system at every level be effective. But it's certainly a great point to make.
So as laid out here with this title and description and resourcing, do I have a motion to approve this position?
You're approving the posting of the position.
The posting of position, yeah. Well, which is essentially...
You're approving the position.
Yeah, the position, right?
It's my understanding that the position, like when we appointed an assistant superintendent, the position, it's when you appoint the person, then the position becomes the position.
Yeah, but
No, they have to approve the
We have to
position first.
approve the
Yeah.
position first.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to approve the position.
And let's actually just real quickly before you get to, let's talk through the hiring, the actual logistics of the hiring process, because it's a pretty high-profile position that certainly we've already, so it's posted. Let's say that we have an abundance of very good resumes. How do you envision the interview process and decision-making process unfolding?
Consistent with, certainly what I personally used in my own experience, the screening of the applications would take place with the three of us, with Maureen, Melissa, and I. We would look at all of the resumes closely and carefully and then determine who we would offer a preliminary screening interview to, just to sort of get a sense of who they are beyond what they are on paper. From that standpoint, then we would convene, in my own experience, 3 different committees made up of a representation of all the different users in the system. You'd have, from the 4 bargaining units. So you would want the people who they're going to be interfacing with also sitting in the interview committee. So aides and monitors and teachers and administrators and students and community members. And if there are 3 people, typically it's best to choose your top 3 from that list of that are screened, and those are the 3 that are invited back to go through a much more extensive interview process where they're being seen 3 different times. And then from that group, and there's feedback gathered through different rubrics that have been developed and used here, and that process would yield 2 people that we would want to bring forward to the board for board interview, and then hopefully from that process, one of those 2 people would be the best candidate for the position, and if not, then it'll be moving forward, and a lot will depend upon, again, who's out there looking, but I'm often told that, certainly everyone's looking for advancement, and this certainly will be attractive to people.
And my final question, I promise, the total salary that's currently envisioned, is it still the $225 that was discussed last 2 weeks ago?
With benefits?
Yeah, so I think, that's based upon about 150 something, 50 to 55 dollar salary and then with the benefits. So the cost you're seeing here is what we're envisioning,
That's the salary that's...
No, we're thinking that'll be the cost for the remainder of this year, and then next year, the full, 225 would be part of the books. So I think it'll probably be a little less if it were to be a December start, actually. It would probably, with that salary level and benefits, it would be more in the line with about 110 or 120 out of this year's money that would be needed.
And then the 2021...
Would be like 225, yeah.
And benefits and...
Well, including the benefits.
Including the
Yes.
benefits. Okay, so walk me through base and benefits on that.
Well, it's about like at 155, and then you have your TRS, your Social Security, all the other benefits and health insurance.
All right, so it's really it's 225 all in.
And those numbers that you're showing here are representative of a full school year?
No, it's for partial, it's for this year. And actually, I think it will be a little bit less than that, because if you were to annualize 225,000, and if the person were to begin in December, it would be closer to like 115 for this year. Depending upon, like, we were just identifying a pool of money, and that would actually, depending upon when you were to hire them, or a little bit more, I guess, money too.
So before we go up to a vote, does anyone want to say, I realize not everyone, people spoke last time about this, but does anyone want to say anything before we vote on this position?
I just have one last question. Is there anything else from BOCES that would maybe be deducted from that contract because of the hiring of this person, or?
We anticipate that, which is why it's so important to get the person in now, as they can help inform that decision going into next year. What parts of the services do we need? I mean, that's really difficult because you need some expertise to make that decision. So certainly we anticipate over the next, couple of school years, we'll have a better sense of what we actually need or don't need, and perhaps it's not Lyric, maybe it's another group, another a provider out there who can that would be in our best interest to take a look at.
And potentially we could make up the rest of the salary that way.
And it would be the place to look, because as I said, at this point we don't really have a way to tease out what we actually need, because we don't have, we're missing that leadership part.
Okay. Do I be voting? No, I was going to, but if you've got some more, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if we're voting.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have a motion to approve the Director of Digital Systems and Learning position?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great. Look forward to that process.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Good. Policy 6741, contracting for professional services.
Yeah, so this is the second read. I didn't know if anyone had any comments about this draft policy.
The only one thing, Lauren, that I was discussing with Valerie, and I don't know whether it needs to be included in here, but we do, when we contract like services through BOCES or some of these other, especially BOCES, or just the dollar threshold here. So we have brought in different, like, just as an example, Marty Brooks, we brought him in, but I didn't do competitive quotes for that. But that is a professional service. So if this could reflect either when it exceeds a certain dollar amount, that would be required, because quite frankly, even with the website design, that's a professional service. We didn't do quotes or anything to, I didn't go through and get, a bunch of even verbal quotes for that. So that's not typical of what districts do when you're talking about like every single professional service, which it doesn't define a dollar amount here. So my concern is if somebody were to hold us.
Yeah, what is the?
I would say like 10,000 over the course of the year. It wouldn't be a 10,000 per, but it would be if we think we're going to do something that would be over 10,000 a year, I think that would make sense. Yep.
Intended spend.
Right. And I mean, I don't know whether you'd be comfortable, and then maybe depending if it's a BOCES service, which is aidable, which, as far as the auditors are concerned, if you contract services through BOCES, they consider that in compliance with an RFP process, because, BOCES, their existence is to kind of do this for schools, right? To kind of offer and then and it also incentivizes us because we do get aid back. So in some ways, it's a way that actually most of the time would be a more affordable way to contract services. So with Gravity, although we got her services through BOCES, we did do an RFP for her. So maybe if it was a service through BOCES, maybe you want to do that. Like if it's through BOCES, anything over 25,000. I don't know. I think there should be kind of pieces, because I think, A, you're allowed to do it, and B, it is a good way to get professional services. So just a thought. But again, I think there needs to at least be a dollar threshold in general.
That's helpful, and I'll take a look at it.
Sorry, I didn't tell you. Every time I look at it,
it's gone through a little bit of work. So I'll take a look and see where that can make sense to go.
Okay, sure.
So we'll revisit it next meeting.
Yep.
Thanks for that, Ron. Second public comment? No? Okay. So, does Board of Ed have any comments?
Well, I just wanted to mention that I'll send around a draft of a statement regarding committees. We talked about which committees we're forming this year, and some of them are required to be open to the public, and some of them are not. And so we've been putting together sort of a draft of sort of a guideline of what a chair of a meeting who's holding a publicly attended meeting could expect, and also to communicate to the public who may or may not be also attending. So just be on the lookout for that, and then if you want to comment on it or change it, let me know.
And I can't remember who I sent it to, but there's only 4 committee meetings that need to be public. Did I send that around?
I saw that.
Yeah,
You did.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
losing track.
And that's policy, finance, audit, and facilities. So.
Okay, yeah. Great, so we'll get you those.
Are we posting the public can attend but not comment?
Yeah, that's the
That's that's part of the language that will guide the chair of a public meeting, so, yeah.
So as an example, we have a safety committee meeting this week, which would not be required to be open to the public. So we're not going to be publicly noticing them, like blasting those either. Because I think right now it's publicly noticed, but it would not be necessarily moving it forward.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a closed meeting.
Yeah, it's unnecessary.
It really, that one should be kind of because of what's
So
discussed.
you don't want them on the calendar, and you don't want them, the committee meeting dates listed?
The 4 committee, so the way that it works is anything can be, 4 must be public: facilities, audit, finance, and policy. Those must be public. The other one, it's up to the committee. Most of the time, a lot of those are district personnel only, and so that's district business, district personnel, and those just aren't, and they haven't been. Safety may be, for example, one has large, broad public appeal, and you may want to.
Like the health, I would invite
Yeah.
the parents because that's one that.
Safety
a lot
may
of
be
times they
one
wanna
that
be
you
at.
want to keep private for safety.
Correct, if there's like certain internal
got-
procedures being discussed.
Exactly. So that one I think we should, but health, so that is up for, so we don't have to notice those. I mean, if you realize something I'm not seeing here, but as far as I know, we don't have to notice those. But the other 4 we must. And so we'll get out some of those comments for the board to see. Okay, anything else? Okay, all right. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.